今ここに。エクスカイザーとキングローダーが巨大合体。勇者エクスカイザー最強のロボキングエクスカイザー。勇者エクスカイザー。新幹線がブルーレイカーとグリーンレイカーに。これが驚異の左右合体だ。ウルトラレイカー登場。ゴッドマックスもすごいぞ。勇者エクスカイザーマックスチーム登場。スカイマックス、ダッシュマックス、ドリルマックス、迫力の3体合体。戦えゴッドマックス。ウルトラレイカーもすごいぞ。勇者エクスカイザー。ドラゴンカイザー登場。キングエクスカイザーと超巨大合体グレートエクスカイザー。フルパワーで攻撃だ。超巨大合体グレートエクスカイザー。三段変形ダイノガイストもすごいぞ。
緊急指令ギャレオンガイガーに変形だ。行くぞファイナルフュージョン承認。ドリルガオライナーガオステルスガオ合体だ。見ろディバイディングドライバー。超人合体ガオガイガー。行くぞ。今ならこのディバイディングドライバーがついてるぞ。任せろ。
出動だ。
急げ分かってるよ。よし合体だ。
町の平和は任せろ。左右合体潮流陣。
ボルホックガンドーベルガングルー合体せよ。腕を上げろ音を出せ。激音合体ビッグボルホックキャンペーン実施中。ハローミーはマイク・サウンダス13世。
レッツゴーマイ
オッケーシステムチェンジ。サウンドスタート。一緒に戦おう。サウンドロボマイク&バリバリ
見ろ超巨大ロボキングジェイダー。宇宙戦艦 J アクリ変形だ。宇宙に敵なし超ド級合体キングジェイダー。
よみがえる熱血伝説マグナティラノからマグナザウラーへ。そしてマグナバスターザウラージェットゴーザウラーと合体。富に熱血武装マグナザウラー。復活最強の戦士恐竜ロボからジェットへ。そしてグランザウラーへ熱血進化。ゴーザウラーマグナザウラーグランザウラー。3つの熱血が時空を超え今一つに。富超熱血合体キングゴーザウラー。
発進。鳳凰獣王剣王雷神王に無敵合体。邪悪帝国から地球を守るのだ。無敵合体雷神王。トミーから雷神ソードもよろしく。伝説は今始まる。ドラゴンからロボへ。無敵変形白竜王。雷神王と超
新合体完成ゴッド雷神王限界を超えた超無敵ロボトミーから登場
未来合体ダルタニアスベラリオスガンパーアトラウス登場21世紀のメカミライオン巨大ロボに完全合体今衝撃の合体革命クロースイン未来ロボダルタニアス完成未来合体デラックス超合金ダルタニアスコピーより発売中
今こそ復活5体の守護獣たち見よこの勇姿進化せよ守護獣たちいでよドラゴンシーザー守護獣たちの進化は続くいでよドラゴンシーザー守護獣たちの進化は続く究極を極めた進め重騎士
小さな体に力を秘めた強い重い精密なメカこれが噂の超合金マジンガー Z コピーより新発売
ゲッターロボ G ドラゴンライガーポセイドン戦闘準備完了人類の敵百鬼帝国を攻撃せよライガーミサイルトマホークブーメランストロングミサイルジャンボマシンガーゲッターロボ G ドラゴンライガーポセイドンポピーより新発売チェンジゲッターゴーあの迫力を君の手にデラックスゲッターロボ GO 豊かよりゲッター GO 合体チェンジゲッターゴーあの興奮と迫力を君の手に戦え僕らのヒーローデラックスゲッターロボ GO そしてゲッターショーゲッターガイ豊かより
ダンボスコンビネーションダンボスゴーダンボスゴーダンボスゴーチェンジ
宇宙の侵略者を迎え撃つためにコンビネーションロボザンボット3ここに誕生3つのメカが1つになってザンボット3
エースフォローアンパンチエースミサイル
ザンボット3コンビネーションジュニアクローバーから発売中
今日も戦い続けるザンボット3今クローバーから
宇宙要塞ソロモンからテキサスそして光る空へ恐怖のモビルアーマービッグザム 赤い彗星シャア専用ザク。ニュータイプの運命は RX78 ガンダム無敵のメカニズム。パーフェクトコレクション機動戦士ガンダムバンダイのプラモデル。黒獅子、赤獅子、そして3代の獅子たちよ。今眠りから覚める5台の未来獣ロボットメカの限界に挑戦。全く新しい奇跡の超合体システムついに完成。未来獣合体ゴライオン、未来に挑戦するポピーより絶賛発売中。
Reactor engaged. Faction locked. All go.
Hello, hello, dear viewers. I hope you're all doing well today. Let me go ahead and get through the super chats before we start properly. We have number 0 for $5. Do you like Star Fox? I like Earth Fox a little bit more. I find it to be a more grounded series. The character is a little more relatable. I think it's enjoyable in like the smaller sense. So, you know. Next question is from Raccoon Fangirl for $5. I wasn't having a good day and I'm still battling against this cold. Lyle, tell me what your favorite tell me about your favorite Halo character. It goes in this order: Master Chief, Johnson, Arbiter, the Shipmaster, and everybody else. Tiramisu for whatever that is. Once more, perfect timing for my art time. I just started college for hotel administration, and it's been tiring. Also, join Lyle server 18 plus. There's cool people like me. True. Emperor Volcano for $5. So, curious question: what is your favorite non-animal dino-based Megazord? Non-animal? I don't know, man. I don't know. Like the SPD stuff's pretty good, but I've always preferred the animal ones. Raccoon Fine Girl for another $5. Lyle, I demand to know what you think of anime Cowboy Bebop. Who's your main character? I must know. I like Cowboy Bebop, and it's Jet. Baiji for $5. Dog, I remember this guy. Me and the anti-brony groups I was a part of used to dick with this guy over a decade ago. That's amazing. That is amazing. Okay, so. Okay, Afro is a bit unhinged, but whatever. Okay, so. A couple things here. Another super chat. Thank you. You guys are very kind tonight. Pastel UFOs for $5. Since I bought up Gatchaman last stream, I was in. Any other Tsunatsu stuff you like, or Tatsunoko stuff? What we call Samurai Pizza Cats is a personal favorite of mine, frankly. And of course, you can't go wrong with Speed Racer, obviously. So, before we get into housekeeping, I want to make something very clear about this stream. If you are here thinking I'm automatically going to tear into the guy, I don't know enough about him to immediately do that. If you're mad about his political takes, there's probably going to be very little of that I'm going to talk about. Not saying it's completely off the table, just unlikely. So we'll go by the numbers. I don't know what this dude's damage is, but we'll find out. Baiji for $20. Funnily enough, while listening to some of your old streams, I learned you how to run in with Supersonic Ward, who we used to mess with back at ABA. He still has a video up talking about one of my troll accounts. God, that sounds so familiar. I wonder when we messed with him and what he had done to actually piss me off. So, when it comes to Animat, I've been aware of his existence. I had somebody send me some video where at the very end he's essentially naked. You don't see anything, but you know he's naked. Accusing him of being a predator based on that, which that's not how that works. That's not how that works. But I've also had people raging at me about his politics. So, who wants a quick Lyo story time? One in the chat if you want a quick Lyo story time. Also, let me go ahead and do something here. Set a goal. Gonna set it for an hour, and the same as always. Start goal. All right, so we have plenty of ones. So, okay. So the other night, I see that 6'7", Lorenzo. I'm coming for you, big boy. So Oh, that's who Supersonic Ward is. Yeah, the guy who tried to excuse a child predator. Why, I'm not surprised. A Raccoon Fine Girl for $5. Supersonic Ward, I remember saying his videos were cringy, his voice acting was awful. Okay, that's right. Thank you for reminding me, Magma Paint. So, a couple days ago, I was in Vlad's server playing Halo, because I'm old, and this dude pops into the chat and does what a lot of people tend to do. They act like I'm supposed to automatically know who they are, and then points to some weird interaction we had on Twitter where he, you guys will love this, was complaining, saying I talk about predators, but I don't talk about the ones in Hollywood. Now, who here in the chat knows how I feel about predators in general, and that I have in fact said Hollywood's full of them? Because it's happened a lot, and he just didn't pay attention. And this ultimately derails into me finding out he's a culture war loser, and I just bullied him the entire call. And then cut to the other night, where he pops back in, because he's very intelligent, and starts going on about how he respects me even though I say insane things, and I challenged him what the insane thing was. He, of course, couldn't provide it, and instead tries to take a shot at me. Fails miserably. I bully him more. I bully him so bad, I essentially tell him, you've got two choices. You can either leave the server, or every time you hop in call, I'm going to bully you. And, well, actually, that was a different guy. I'm mixing my idiots up. So the other guy comes back in. Not that guy, different guy. The one who was a culture war loser gets back in call, and we have that back and forth about the fact that I said crazy things. And come to realize, he doesn't actually know any of the values he espouses, and at one point even told me that he got his moral values from from school. So anytime he's in call, I'm going to bully him. I asked him, since he wanted to bring up, of all things, abortion. I asked him, do you think abortion should never, ever happen? And he said yes and no. I said, it can't be yes or no. It has to be yes or no. So he said, no, shouldn't. I said, so some poor child gets impregnated at 9 by a parent. They should carry that to term. Yes, and it did not end well for him. And I'll make this very clear. A lot of people would assume that Vlad's server is just filled with a bunch of right-wing or heavily right-leaning political people. It's primarily just edgelords whose banter primarily comes from Xbox Live. They don't even like people like this because they find those types of people annoying, which is fine. But I also had a fun little excursion that I might turn into a YouTube short. And this is all part of housekeeping, don't worry. Real quick, from Lacy Pink Landmine for $5, thoughts on Nindoroids. I have a couple myself. Tons of love, Line Guy. Well, thank you. It's very kind of you. I had one. Not really my thing. Baiji for $5. Speaking of Halo, we still got to continue suffering through combat campaign evolved. If I can get it to freaking work. Doggone it. So, the other night, because I've had this week off, I saw a live stream pop up in my feed, and it was allegedly a Christian live stream. And I pop in, and some people are arguing in a very strange manner, so I hop in their server, I hop in call, and I found that they were essentially arguing with an intoxicated individual. Was the Animat? I'm not talking about Animat. This is not. None of this is related to Animat. I'm doing housekeeping, telling stories real quick, okay? So I start engaging with them. Finds out that the intoxicated guy, they essentially, I think, is poor sportsmanship. They just sit there and dog on the guy, or have goofy conversations with them, turning them into content. And really quickly, the guy who runs the channel and the server makes it very clear he doesn't like me in the most passive-aggressive, man-child way possible. And he asks me questions, trying to essentially get me in gotchas, I would guess. Because the questions he asks me, I ask for more specificity on. Because brain go burr, and I don't like blanket questions, right? Apparently he got offended by that. That really rustles him. He said, what do you call a group of men who are trying to, what was his exact words? I'm going to try to remember it. Essentially trying to separate themselves from sin. I mean, it depends on what group we're talking about. Because there's a lot of theologies that make that claim. So what group are we talking about? What he wanted me to say was to kiss his boot and say, well, this is your group, and it's a group of a fellowship. No. So, he starts being passive-aggressive to me. I just flatly ask him, do you have a problem with me? We can talk about it. He's like, no, you can just ignore me. So I muted him. I did exactly what he said I could. His response to that, dear chat, was to server mute me in rage. Because when I follow a direction or instruction or a recommendation, little Mr. Man didn't like that. And I listened to the stream even though I'm muted in it. Listen to what's going on, and a name keeps being brought up. Jesse Lee Peterson. So I spent a little bit of today looking into that guy. Now, if you want to see some of the things I've said, you can go look at my Twitter, because I have a fun little conversation with these little weirdos. Finds out Jesse Lee Peterson is an alleged Christian pastor, who's also a very much so dyed-in-the-wool right-winger who calls Trump, and I am not even joking, the Great White Hope. Now, I don't know about you guys, but as a Christian, last I checked, our only hope is in Christ. It's not another random man, especially not in politicians that touch kids. Finds out that, like other far right-wingers, Jesse also apparently likes kids. He has credible allegations of grooming and sexual assault. He also, much like other Republicans, is probably one of the reasons why Grindr goes down when a Republican convention is in. And I bring all this up, and man, they don't like it. Man, they don't like it. So essentially, they get so butt mad, they server mute me for a week, and then finally ban me. Apparently, me getting passionate and tearing into somebody for the dumb take of, and I'm not even joking with you, that Paul is an antichrist. The Apostle Paul, who wrote the majority of the New Testament. There's somebody in there who is claiming up and down that he's an antichrist, and when we went at it, I tore him to pieces. Apparently, that is me being over-emotional and rude. But people cussing, insulting, and threatening, that's fine, because they're his friends. So, I enjoyed myself thoroughly once I realized there was no actual conversation to have here. Might as well just bully the freaks. So, I hope he enjoys the shout-out in this stream, because I might make a YouTube short bullying him. Pastel UFOs for $5. I feel like if you heard the things my ex-pastor spews, you'd have a heart attack. Well, one of my ex-pastors actually unironically tried to teach clan theology, so, you know, I probably wouldn't have a heart attack. I'd probably just not be surprised anymore. So, with all the fun things and my own experiences there out of the way, let's talk about things that are actually fun. Today, for the first time ever, I now have a Hiya Toys Godzilla figure. And for those of you who wanted to know, it's the GMK Godzilla. Not my favorite, not the first one I wanted, but I still have one and I am enjoying him thoroughly. I finally got a hold of Studio Series 86 Starscream. I know that it probably wasn't wise to spend more than I should have on it because it's going to get re-released or whatever, but I'm old, I'm tired. I don't feel like going all around Houston to try to find one goddamn toy. So, yeah. Also got a fairly clean Jetfire G1, so I'm doing some work on it, so. Also, with the exception of one day, because I needed to get something done for it, the first week of Power Ranger September for the shorts is now live. If you're a member, you can go look at that, and you can enjoy that, and hopefully people will enjoy Power Ranger September, then followed by Transformtober in October. So, now that that's out of the way, and I have given as many qualifications as I can, let's take a look at Animat here. This is the first video. Now, some people have said that I should have waited till our 4 videos come out and then do a stream. Brother, I am 41. I have a job. I am old and tired. I'm not going to sit on a stream for 8 and 9 hours going over 4 minimum hour-long videos consistently. No. No. And no. So, let's go ahead and put this. I'll see if this helps you guys. I'll put some of the words on the screen. And change the playback speed to 1.25. This is, or 1.5. I've had enough of the cartoon community and fandom's 1 of 4 hypocrisy. Now, what is it he's going to bring up? Well, we will find out together. Raccoon Fangirl for $5. I bought Victor Van Doom toy base off the new Avenger movie that's coming out, so I'm pumped I pre-ordered it. I cannot wait to bring out the box. I'm not really going to pay attention to that film. But, let's see what he has to say. Let's rewind it all the way back. All right, Animat, wow me.
For those of you who are familiar with who I am, then you know that I have been making videos related to animation for many years now. In fact, I'm pretty much at the point where about half of my life now has been dedicated to being Animat and talking about my interests, whether it be with animation, Disney, Muppets, Epic Mickey, or what have you. I've been doing this for quite some time with literally hundreds of videos where I would go and express myself and express my interest through history videos, through reviews, and so much more.
And for those of you asking, yes, there will be a part 2 when the other 2 drop. One already has, but I'll probably cover that with the second one or the fourth one when it drops.
However, throughout my time when talking about animation, I can't help but notice that there has been a cataclysmic downfall with one entity in the world of animation. And the most shocking thing about it is that it is one that not many people seem to want to really talk about. Not only are there few people who would openly go and discuss about this problem,
it's Ralph Bakshi, clearly.
But there are many others who are willing to go and flat out ignore it, thinking that if they don't acknowledge it, then somehow the problem would go away. But of course, that is not the case, because especially in recent years, they have just been getting worse and worse and
So can I just ask why you're looking into this? I'm not against it, mind you. I'm always up for a conversation. I'm just curious what put Animat on the radar. I like cartoons. I mean, that's kind of it.
worse, to the point that
Also, I have my own grievances with the cartoon community because they have horrific priority issues.
now the problems are becoming so frequent that it's becoming difficult to go and catch up. And what I'm talking about specifically is not related to a studio or company. It's not related to a prominent figure in the animation industry. It's not regarding one specific individual. It's not regarding a franchise. It's not related to a movie or a series or any form of cartoon. What I'm talking about specifically is in regards to the cartoon community. Or this goes by many different names. Some say the animation community, the animation fan base, the cartoon fandom. Basically, the group of fans, specifically those who are active on social media, that openly express or mainly express their interest in animation. That is the entity that is having a cataclysmic downfall right now. That is the group that now more than ever, they have become more and more and more toxic. And I believe it is time that we need to have an open discussion that there is a serious problem with the community, and not only should we go and address it, but we need to start taking action in holding accountability if we ever wish to go and save the fandom and, in a way, saving animation itself.
Hidden Heroine for $5. I'm so glad Lio has moving videos, images on his layout because the visuals and dude's videos are so boring. Maybe so. But here's the thing. He talks about, save the fandom, and in a way saving animation stuff. You can't. There's nothing like a fandom can do to save animation. In fact, I watch people rally about the Roadrunner and Coyote, the Acme movie, right? That Warner Brothers initially binned. If that movie's bad, I'm going to laugh so doggone hard. You have no clue. But this is actually kind of arrogant, assuming that fans can magically save animation. These people aren't in the industry, and they're certainly not pushing for effective change in the industry. So we'll see what he has to say and what he thinks the active change should be in the industry. Let's see if he has any solutions. Because I believe it was... God, what's his name? Theodore Roosevelt said, essentially, that complaining without a solution's just whining. Raccoon Fangirl for $2. Is this guy friends with Anthony Gargula?
Now, with all of these names, just to go and make a clarification right now, that throughout this video, I will be referring to them as the cartoon community, just so we can go and have some consistency going on. But for those of you who still do follow me, you may have noticed...
What's up, Ninja?
...that I have been more openly critical towards the cartoon community, especially on my Blue Sky account and also on my podcast, Animat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. But also, on top of that, you may have also seen that even in my videos, I've also started to go and be more critical in regards to their behavior and the problems that are currently happening within the fandom. So from there, I ultimately decided, and this is something that I will admit right now, I have been contemplating to create this video.
We must, Archer says, $5, we must secure a platform for our fandom and a future for animation. That's a reference, isn't it?
Video for quite some time, but I feel like now would be the perfect opportunity to go and express myself in terms of all the problems that I have had with the community, at least from my personal perspective. I know that there are others who will have their own issues with the group that they could go and express, but this is just more from my perspective and make one big video just to go and summarize all the issues and all the problems that they have been having and that we need to go and call this out. So that's basically the main purpose of this entire video. It will be lengthy, as you probably see in the time frame, but you will see that there is a lot to cover in terms of their problems, and especially with the toxicity that is only growing. And honestly, it really is at the point that if nothing is going to get done, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. So as of this video, this is in terms of the problems that they have now. you never know if in the future that these problems are going to grow more significantly, or there's going to be an increasing amount of issues that this community is going to have. So either way, either if I would go and save it for later, or if I do it now, it wouldn't make much of a difference. There is a clear problem, and again, it needs to be addressed. Now, before I go and fully get into these problems, I want to go and make a few disclaimers. And these will be disclaimers that I will be repeating throughout this video, just so we could go and make things fully clear about what I am talking about here. And even with these disclaimers, we can go and fully understand the full situation, how we could go and properly take action, and that we can have a full understanding of what I am talking about here. Now, the first thing I want to address is that even though I will be specifically discussing about the cartoon community, these are issues that, of course, will also be attributed to fandom culture as a whole. Maybe you watching, you are a part of a different kind of fandom, and maybe the list of things that I will be saying, they sound familiar, and that maybe there are problems in there as well. So,
can you please stop filibustering and get to the point? You're boring me.
So, in a way, this isn't just going to be about...
I'm going to turn it at 2.5 speed. I can't handle whatever this is. Actually, we'll do 175 since I can, or 80, 75, whatever.
The cartoon community, but this is also problems with fandoms in general. And even though, again, I'm mainly going to be talking about the cartoon community, I do encourage you to go and address these problems if they are also part of the fandom that you're in as well. So that's one thing I want to go and highlight. The second thing that I want to address, and this is going to be something that I will be repeating, is that this is not going to reflect on all animation fans. I do acknowledge that there are still many animation fans out there that are still cool, that are still great, and that the toxicity that is within the group...
This could have been a text.
This only reflects upon a minority. However, this toxicity is still loud and proportionate enough to cause some serious problems. If it were just a small group of people, like just an insignificant amount that's just doing this, I wouldn't even be making this video in the first place. But considering the proportion of it and how they could be quite extreme and that their actions can have some real-world consequences, well, it's worth addressing. So again, this doesn't reflect upon everyone. This is just in regards to the toxic minority, but still, this toxic minority is still quite a problem. And it could be debatable on who is participating in this because it could be a little bit more than you may think. It is a minority, but still quite a sized minority in there. And number 3, and this is possibly the most important one, please do not go and harass anybody that I mention in this video. Now, I will go and name a few names in the industry.
No, harass them. Gear up in your armor and charge. Destroy your opponents.
And in the community as well as highlighting some social media posts as well. But whoever I would go and highlight and whoever I would go and talk about, please do.
Sneaky for $10 guacamole. Jeb Bush has been summoned.
Not go and harass anyone. In fact, this is one of the problems that I will be highlighting later in this, but it is still worth mentioning right now. And I mean, more than ever nowadays, it is important to go and actually make people
We're 9 minutes in. Get to the point.
remember that harassment is never good. And also, on a side
Raccoon Fangirl for $5. How do I speed up a live stream? It's not you, Lyotim. Trust me, I know I'm suffering too.
note, I just want to go and say that I really do hope that this is not going to be the only video that will go and address the problems with the cartoon community. And luckily,
Animac getting to the point at the rate of molasses going uphill in January with crutches? Yeah, or yeesh. Well, if it's in Texas, it'll be fine. This is the same guy who compared an animation company, Sony Pictures Animation, to the Orange Man. So, I mean, they both probably are full of pedophiles, so I guess in one way that could be fair.
there have been a few that do actually talk about it, even before I even started this. So with that said, there will be links in the description to a few people that I want to go and highlight, and that I highly recommend that you go and check them out to go and see their perspective with the problems with the cartoon community. One example is the YouTube channel Smarty Pants, whom he has been addressing through numerous of videos with many of the issues related to the cartoon community, and that their behavior can be the main problem than whatever problem that they're complaining about. And there's also a series that I would like to go and highlight that, as I'm recording this, it has already begun, in which it chronicles the history of the cartoon community and where is it that they went terribly wrong. And this is started by an animator whom on YouTube calls himself Burb666. And this is something that I actually did help participate. I was one of the people that he interviewed.
Well, one day we'll look at that and see if it's accurate. Not really impressed with the name, though. Try not to be too edgy this time.
Viewed for the video series and have been a bit close to him, like catching up on updates on what he has been doing with his production. So I just want to go and give a shout out to Burb and highly recommend that you go and check his channel out, as well as Smarty Pants and whoever I would put in the link in the description. So hopefully this is not going to be the only video that you will watch in terms of the problems with the cartoon community. You can also go and check them out as well. So with all that said, let's actually get into the problems with the cartoon community. And the first one I want to go and highlight is probably the most common complaint in regards to the cartoon community, which is how they use the mantra, animation is cinema. Yes, there was a time when animation is cinema used to be an admirable term, a term in which...
This is what we're starting with. And no, I'm going to disagree. It was never a admirable term because it's never what they actually try to play pretend it is. Animation is cinema is always, hey, my hyper-focused niche thing that's getting a movie, I want that to be considered good and respected amongst filmmakers. So, animation cinema, guys, enjoy the thing I enjoy. Don't criticize it.
Highlights that animation is not how the public perceives as just a kid's genre, but rather an artistic medium that should be taken seriously. One
Make them take it seriously. Put out media that's taken seriously. Instead of just, let's take this kid's franchise and do another reboot movie about it. Look, you can enjoy the Mario films. That's fine. That's all well and good. But you can't sit here and play pretend that it's like some high-tier media. It just isn't.
who can go and craft amazing stories and create beautiful art that more people should go and pay attention to and actually experience. Nowadays, however, it is often considered to be a joke where cartoon fans would go and use this as a desperate attempt to want to go and be taken seriously, and that they want the stuff.
Animation is cinema, so we have Puss in Boots' Last Wish, that Kraken story, Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol. Why is Oppenheimer here? Oppenheimer wasn't animation. I'm sure it had some, but it wasn't an animated film. Also, love that animation is cinema. You know what the biggest thing I keep hearing about the Puss in Boots movie, because I have seen it, is, oh, they did a realistic panic attack. I don't care. I so don't care if they showed a realistic panic attack. What else did they do?
That they watch to also be taken seriously as well. It feels more like a desperate call of action, more so than a genuine saying to go and honor the medium that it wants to go and respect. Now, there are different ways that many people can see how the animation is cinema mantra and the way that the cartoon community would go and use it. There are many different interpretations of how it can go and be a problem. But through my perspective, I feel like the big issue with how the cartoon community sees animation as cinema is that it highly warps their perspective on whatever they watch to where their standard now becomes incredibly high. I would even say it's almost...
Gonna correct you on that, Rotten Roo. Animation isn't a film genre, it's a film medium. Genre is like romance, action, sci-fi, yada yada.
Impossibly high, where there can only be a selected few that they could go and approve. Because for the cartoon community with that mindset, they cannot just go and watch an animated film or an animated show or any form of cartoon, and then they could just walk out and say, I like it, I enjoyed it. You know, they can't just do that, because they have a long list that they want to go and check out in order to make sure that the cartoon can actually go and ultimately meet their criteria. Because it's not enough for them to just enjoy it, they mainly want to go and want to use that cartoon in order to go and advance their narrative that animation is cinema. And even if there are just a few marks that it didn't pass, they would go and completely reject it. It would just mean absolutely nothing to them. So it's not enough for them to like it. It also depends on what critics are saying, what word of mouth is saying about the project, if it could meet that massive approval in terms of getting critical praise and praise from the audience as well. There is also how successful it could do either on streaming or at the box office, if it could get massive views on whatever streaming platform it's on, or if it could really rank up the money at the box office. And then possibly later on, it would also depend on how many awards it could go and get, and if it can be a big winner on the best animated feature category or the best animated series category at the Emmys or stuff like that. And then there's also how viral it can be on the internet, like in terms of the memes or the posts when people would go and talk about, or
what is he going on about?
How much fan art people would go and dedicate to making it, and the list goes on from there. It needs to be an absolute masterpiece. It needs to be like an absolute phenomenon in order to get the cartoon community's approval so that they can go and use that cartoon in order to go and say animation is cinema. And even if there is something that does meet all that criteria that they can go and actually use to go and say animation is cinema, sometimes the way that they would go and present it can actually be for all the wrong reasons, and that it would feel more disingenuous if they even liked the project in the first place. And possibly the greatest example that I could think of is in regards to the competition that the fans have created of K-pop Demon Hunters versus Elio. Now, you may remember back in the summer of 2025, those two animated features came out on the same day, one in which came out on streaming and the other came out in theaters. And considering how the cartoon community have always pleaded for more original creations to go and be made, especially in this day and age of cinema that is heavily reliant on IPs, sequels, remakes, and more, you would think that would be a moment to go and really celebrate, especially for the cartoon community, in which on the same day, they got not one, but two original animated features from two high-profile animation studios. Especially in the case of Elio, considering that it is a new original animated feature from from Pixar, and it actually helps to go and disprove the many claims that people would go and say that, oh, Disney nowadays is just doing nothing but sequels and remakes and all that kind of crap. At least it does show that they are trying to put in effort in order to go and actually release more original works. And it's also very nice as well that both of these films actually did at least meet the criteria of actually getting both positive word of mouth as well as getting critics approval, both of which getting high praise from critics ranging from being good to great, as well as audiences coming out saying that they actually did enjoy both of those movies. Now, you would think the cartoon community would be happy with the fact that they got two great original animated features, but unfortunately, that is not what happened. Because in terms of the performance of how they've done, K-Pop Demon Hunters ended up becoming very successful, where it went on to become the biggest movie on streaming and became a massive...
Wait, let me double check, because I thought he said something else. Give me a second here. So we're at 1834, so let me try something.
And possibly the greatest example that I could think of is in regards to the competition that the fans have created of K-Pop Demon Hunters versus Elio. Now, you may remember back in the summer of 2025, those two animated features came out on the same day, one in which came out on streaming, and the other came out in theaters. And considering how the cartoon community have always pleaded for more original creations to go and be made, especially...
Okay, so he didn't say what I thought he said. That's fine. I just wanted him to get to his doggone point. Well, we got a lull. We have... Oh, we have the Gidget. So firstly, let's take a look at these. Bomberman for $5. The Bob the Builder film was so brave for killing a Bob in the first 5 minutes. Agreed. Also resurrecting him as a zombie in the end just to kill him again. That was very, very clever take. Animat cites Grant Anthony Gramugula, someone you previously streamed about live, just so you know he openly supports Gramugula, no joke. He probably doesn't pay attention to what Anthony actually says. Most of these people don't genuinely know each other. Animat is also the same guy who called Trump to America to Osama bin Laden. He said bin Laden has proved to be a more efficient leader than Trump. Okay, it's kind of out of pocket, but whatever. Raccoon Fangirl for $2. Put this nerd in the locker, Laya. We'll see. Budgie Pudgy for $5. I'm feeling this guy slept through a high school English class. Remember the essay planning tree? Just me? Yes, just you. I actually have no idea what you're talking about. But we have reached the goal. So it is time for some Gidgey. I hope you all enjoyed the Gidgey. I have restarted the goal. But let's finish what he has to say here.
This movie on streaming and became a massive phenomenon, while Elio, on the other hand, unfortunately became a box office flop. And from there, considering that K-Pop Demon Hunters is much easier to go and use and to present that animation is cinema much more than Elio, what ultimately happened was that many fans would go and use K-Pop Demon Hunters to go and straight up attack Disney and Elio. Basically,
okay, so doing what human beings do. What's the problem with that inherently?
shaming the Pixar film for not being successful and framing its financial failure as a failure to the movie itself, which is why you then see people accusing Disney of the Cal art style or using the beam mount, trying to be more critical and throw in a lot of hate and basically weaponizing K-pop Demon Hunters as a way to go and attack Disney. And this...
Okay, so here's the problem. Lyle, you really... I had one, but it got copyright claimed. I haven't found a suitable one. But here's the problem when it comes to all this. He's saying a lot of things. He's not actually demonstrating what he's talking about. A thumbnail does not show me what he's saying it says, right? Actually taking excerpts from these videos would highlight that better. I don't care if Disney is dogged on. The multi-billion-dollar child labor company will be fine, I promise you. I don't really care if people dog on Disney. I never have. I never will. I don't care. If this was an indie studio that was needlessly being dogged on, then maybe we'd have a different conversation. But here's the truth of the matter. Human beings always, 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 always see things, compare them, contrast them, and then try to make them fight. You can trace this back to literally any time in your life. A show you like, a video game you like. Somebody compares it to another video game. Somebody compares it to another show. Somebody compares your freaking softball stats versus somebody else's. That's just how life is. Does it sound like Lily Orchard, or am I just being stupid? I would never compare anybody to Lily Orchard. Not unless I found out he cuts kids. I don't care about Lily Orchard's media takes. She should kill herself. And I'm just going to say, if anybody cares about Lily Orchard's media take, shun them immediately, because they care more about whether or not she was mean about a cartoon that they liked than the fact that she's a kid toucher. Actually insane behavior. But yeah, I don't care if Disney gets bullied. No one should.
this is just one of the many examples of when the cartoon community ultimately goes into tribalism and turns animated projects into this massive competition where suddenly they react the same way as sports fans would do, where they ultimately want to see a winner and a loser and would really put in a lot of their energy on just straight up attacking the loser, of just shaming the loser for being the loser. In fact, in this example of
No, he doesn't physically sound like her either.
K-pop and Elio, there are some people out there whom they don't actually care about K-pop Demon Hunter.
I love Zootopia so much, but I'm so glad a studio won over Disney. This is so okay. So they're celebrating the indie studio won over Disney. What's the problem?
They don't think it's a good movie, or that they've admitted that
they're not saying that it's not a good movie. They're just saying that they're happy it won over Disney. Why are you using this as the visual?
They've never watched it, but they just want to go and jump on the bandwagon.
I don't really like K-pop Demon Hunters, but then again, it wasn't aimed at me. I was rooting for Zootopia 2, but I'm not mad Disney losing streak continues, to be honest. They don't need it. I mean, finally, he shows actually what he's talking about, but at the same time, why does Animat care? Why do you care if people are dogging on Disney? That's just part of the ecosystem. People are going to be critical of things. You should be critical of things.
Just to have an additional excuse to go and hate on Disney and slam on Elio. And that's why whenever I see this trend of tribalism happen, and you see all these people who would go out of their way to try to highly elevate one and then take down the other, it honestly makes me question if they really genuinely are fans of the things that they want to go and elevate in the first place. Like, if
Wait, how is being critical of specific films or specific studios mean you don't care about animation or you're not a fan of it? Like, I'll put it this way. If you enjoy food, but there's a certain item you don't like, does that mean that somehow you actually don't enjoy food? No, you have a preference.
If we use this example of K-pop and Elio, if you would force these types of fans to go and say, which one are you? Are you a fan of K-pop or are you a hater of Elio? And you have to force them to not say both because that's just the stupid, easy way out in order to go and try to dodge the question. Which one do you think they would choose?
I have no idea because I don't know these individuals. And more importantly, I will ask again, why does this matter?
Because honestly, with that kind of mentality that people would go into, it's honestly a lot more likely that they would say they just want to hate Elio more so than they genuinely want to say that they love K-pop Demon Hunters.
You don't have any actual evidence for that. You have assumption based on a single tweet. You haven't demonstrated how that's true.
Because when it comes to these types of fans, or on the more toxic side of the cartoon community, they would rather go and communicate in terms of the things that they want to.
Here's the problem I have when people bring up toxicity. They need to define their terms. What do you mean by toxicity? Because if this becomes one of those they're not positive enough types of quote-unquote toxicity, toxic positivity exists too. I'm sorry, but it does. And if you can't recognize that, you're probably not a functional adult.
Hate more so than just talk about the things that they want to enjoy. They're more likely to go and try to slam on Elio more so than they want to go and just say the things that they like about K-pop Demon Hunters. Oh, and by the way, before I go and continue, there is something that I want to go and address as well, because I can already hear some keyboards typing and people who are ready to go and pull this card up in order to make some kind of counter argument against me. Because I know that it's going to happen, and I know it's still happening to this day, where people will go and point out the whole Sony Pictures animation controversy with me.
I actually have no idea what he's talking about, so don't worry, Animat. I'll judge you based purely on your argument itself and not whether or not you've made mistakes as a person, because I would hope people would do the same decency towards me.
I know that there are going to be those people who will go bring up that I was once a toxic member of the cartoon community as well.
Don't do that to me, Lorenzo. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me.
And that I've made hyperbolic and extremely anger-inducing rants regarding some of their past films like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Hotel Transylvania, The Emoji Movie, and more, and that some of my comments went way too far, and that I've been very disrespectful towards the people who have worked on those movies.
I have literally told certain toy designers to kill themselves. I don't think I can judge him on that one, chat.
I know for a fact that many people will want to go and use that excuse in order to shut me up. And to that, I just want to go and say, I understand. Because yes, I did absolutely fuck up during that time. Yes, I let my emotions get the best of me, and I went...
Let's not keep bringing up his voice, please. He can't help that, okay? Messing with somebody based on intrinsic characteristics is stupid behavior. I expect better.
Went way too far with my comments on both Sony Pictures Animation and those movies that they had produced. Yes, sure, maybe my opinions hasn't really changed. I don't think that Cloudy or Hotel Transylvania are good movies in the first place, but I do acknowledge now that these are nothing more than just my opinions, and they're no different than when people say that Cloudy and Hotel Transylvania are great movies.
I mean, I think Hotel Transylvania is okay. Gendy's a great director, but, like, he can have his opinion, it's fine. I will not turn myself up a smidge. I will turn this down a smidge, just to spite you. Pastel UFOs for $5. Matt's problem has always been, but we should respect all animation and act like the film's above criticism for simply existing. That's not how reality works. And I really hope he doesn't actually make that argument. No, we shouldn't respect all animation, just like we shouldn't respect all ideas. We should be civil, yes, but respect, no. If I pointed out some gross, like, weird anime rape animation, I'd ask him, should this be respected, Matt? And he'd probably be like, no, it shouldn't be. Why? Because that's the sane thing to say, I would hope.
What happened to me was that I really got into that whole animation is cinema mentality, and it ended up getting the best of me where...
Well, here's the thing. If you actually think animation is cinema, newsflash, you should expect and demand better. Not sit there and just post or push whatever is common or whatever is comfortable for you or whatever suits your specific autistic obsession. And I'm not saying autism derogatory. I mean that literally. No. You should push things that are challenging or things that are rougher in the sense of storytelling in depth and different animation techniques that actually take more time and work.
Yeah, back then I was pretty uncontrollable with my emotions. Yeah, I did not handle those situations very well. And it did ultimately lead to backlash that I ultimately deserved. And at that point, I worked very hard over the years in order to grow from that whole experience, to go and fully move on from having that entire attitude and to have a new perspective, not just on Sony Pictures Animation, but also on animation in general. And I will say that I think I am confident enough to say that I am no longer that person that I used to be. That, yes, I do acknowledge that what I have done back then was absolutely wrong. And I don't blame people if they don't want to forgive me for the things that I have said, whether it be from fans.
Raccoon Fangirl for $10, and hopefully this is better for all of you. Sorry about the voice. My ear still stuffed up and cold kicking my butt. Animation shall be encouraged to do better. When I made films that better structure and animation. True. I got a better example for you, adult party cartoon. We don't talk about that. We don't talk about adult party cartoon.
Of those movies or from the people who actually did work on those productions. If you don't like me for what I've done in the past, honestly, I don't blame you on that. But I have done my best in order to go and improve my behavior and apply that not just on Sony, but just from my perspective on animation as a whole. And yeah.
See, the thing is, this is something he actually could have hammered in a little bit more, because part of the problem with the cartoon community is their inability to recognize growth and change and to let people become better. That's part of their issue, like genuinely part of the actual issue. And instead, he's just giving them a pass, which is not what you should be doing in a video, criticizing them.
Lately, I've been doing a lot better. Even when Sony Animation doesn't put out a good movie, like with Hotel Transylvania, Transformania, for example, I've learned to go and improve upon my criticisms, the way that I talk about the people in the productions. I've done a lot of work in order to be better. And the only thing that I can hope for from there is that maybe other people can actually notice that I have put in the effort to go and improve. But with all that said, during that whole time that I've kind of rehabilitated myself from that angry phase and from that phase when I was in that entire animation is cinema mentality, I did unfortunately gain a bit of a fear that the cartoon community would not learn the lessons that I have, that they would not learn about what is it that I have done wrong, and that they would end up doing those same mistakes where they would end up hurting others more so than actually doing good.
Because they've never cared about doing good, Animat. That's not the point. The truth of the matter is, they only bring it up to you so long as they can morally grandstand you because you say things they don't like. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll realize you don't need to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Tied to their opinion. Sneaky for $5. Is he only into media for the vibes type of people? Like Anthony? I don't know. Maybe he is. I don't know him.
They would go and say things that they would end up regretting, just like what I have. And unfortunately, it is at the...
TLDR, Animat, self-awareness is not a common thing in the animation, cartoon, or whatever you want to call it, community. And we'll talk about why here shortly.
Point where I would say that fear has sadly become a reality. And that the cartoon community, or at least...
So when does John K. grow and change as a person? He can't be like... He can't. The minute you're a kid toucher, your ability to grow and change should only be in the fact that you should be fertilizer. And he is. He's a serial child predator. John K. should be dead.
Those that are more in the toxic category, they only see what is on the surface. And they don't focus necessarily on the behavior, but just on the targets. That they think that certain toxic behaviors are perfectly fine to go and express as long as it's towards the right targets. That I was only wrong because I did that behavior towards films like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and...
Yes, no wrong tactics, only wrong targets. I'm familiar with the idiom.
Hotel Transylvania. But if I would go and express that behavior on other projects that the cartoon community would consider to be worthy to go and hate and attack and stuff like that, I probably would not receive as much backlash as I have. And you know what the worst part is? I know a perfect example of a Sony Pictures animation movie in which the cartoon community's behavior, or at least the toxic side of it, went way too far. And I would even dare say that it is so extreme, even surpassing what I have done in terms of how I used to express my thoughts on Sony Pictures animation, in which it is their turn to go and show off their massive hate boner for Sony and just straight up not just attacking the movie, but also attacking the people who worked on it. And you know the craziest thing about it? It's actually quite a recent example with Fixed. And it's honestly very funny with Fixed, because on paper, you would think that this is a dream project for the cartoon community, something that they would absolutely go and use.
You think the crass film about animal testicles is the animation is cinema argument and something people would be more excited about? Are you high?
To go and display that animation is cinema. It's from Sony Pictures Animation, and especially around the same time during the peak of K-pop Demon Hunter's popularity. It is a long-time passion project from Genndy Tartakovsky, one of the most admirable figures in animation today. It's 2D animated, to which is something that animation fans have been begging to see make a comeback, and it is an R-rated film to which they can go and show that animation is also for adults. However, Fixed ultimately came out as one of, if not the most hated animated feature of 2025. And it's one thing if the cartoon community would just go and express that they don't like this film and they thought that it was terrible, but there have been some reactions that would go and take it way too far. And I don't just mean some of the more stupid entitlements of saying that, oh, this is a disgrace to animation, this is a disgrace to art, this is the death of 2D animation, and all that kind of pretentious snobby bullcrap. But at the same time, there have also been some fans who take it way too far, and they would go and make some extreme claims towards both Genndy Tartakovsky and the animators who have worked on it. There are some people who claim that Genndy Tartakovsky is zoophile and that he has a kink for animals in heat, and especially there are some toxic fans who would actually go as far as to straight up harass anybody who would go and mention that they have worked on Fixed, where they would bombard them with so much verbal abuse that some animators had no choice but silence their own contribution to Fixed just to go and stop all that harassment. And listen, I understand why there are some people who...
Okay, so here's part of the problem, right? Number one, I haven't seen Fixed because I'm sane, but if I go on there and I see animal genitalia being sexualized, I will also call Genndy a zoophile, and I will not apologize for it. So the thing is, he's like, well, this is all they wanted something that was heavily rated. They wanted something that was 2D animated. Yeah, about that, you can say all day long, this is what they asked for, but it's not what they asked for. If you order a well-done steak, right, and you talk about how you want the crust to be really, really crisp, you want, like, I don't know, a certain type of sauce on it, but instead they give you a similar sauce that's not the same, and they give you a medium rare, you don't get to say, well, I gave you what you want, I gave you a steak. No, when they say that, they mean things with more emotional depth, not 15-year-old garbage humor that is only rated R because Genndy thought, ha, penis funny. That is not what people mean by that. And it's a dishonest take, and Animat, you should know better. You've been doing this for over a decade. Come on, man.
Hate Fixed or think that it's one of the worst animated films in recent years. I understand that for some people, they're not into those sex jokes and that the movie can be way too much for them. Even I will say right now, I'm not into Fixed. I don't really think it's that great or even good of a movie. Now, I wouldn't go and say that I think the film is just flat out terrible. I have expressed in my review that I do think that it is a minor step up compared to some of Sony's past films, like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania, but I don't really think it's that good of a movie either. And yet, I just find it so perplexing that there are some toxic fans who are just so enraptured by their own anger that they don't see what is wrong with their actions. They believe that Fixed is just so not up to their standard that they think it's justifiable to get so angry and to just straight up attack not just the movie, but anybody who was involved. You know?
Okay, what do you mean by attacked? Give us an example of being attacked. If it's them tagging the people and saying mean things about their movie, gonna be real blunt. Welcome to social media. Welcome to human beings. The people who they're doing that to can just block them and go about their lives.
Honestly made me wonder, has nobody ever stopped to think, hey, maybe we shouldn't be acting like that Sony hater with the orange hat. Maybe we shouldn't be acting like that guy when it comes to this movie. Yeah, it sucks, but maybe we should be a little bit more respectful about it. Or at least be more respectful with the people who...
Respect is earned. Respect is earned, not given. Civility should be given, but respect is earned.
...are involved. And what's even crazier is that there are legit some people who are more upset at me than they are at people who harass the animators at Fixed. There are some people who got seriously upset over the fact that I would go out of my way to call out.
Okay, and I wonder why people hate this movie. Cartoon YouTuber fails to comprehend what... Okay, so somebody did a video on your take. Who cares?
The bad behavior that is being expressed when it comes to Fixed. That people are more mad at me that I called out the harassers than the actual harassers themselves. Or even more insane is that there are more people who are mad that I said that Fix is better than Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania than they are at the people who would go and harass the animators. And that is the point where, going back to what I was saying, unfortunately, there are people out there who only see the targets and not the behavior, where they see nothing in terms of what is wrong with the behavior, and they only see the targets, and they think that alone should be justifiable in terms of whatever behavior that would be expressed by the cartoon community. Or,
well, I mean, again, what is considered justifiable expression of behavior depends on the target. Like, that is genuinely just the truth of the matter. So, for example, if somebody I've invited over to my home, genuinely friendly, with no idea that there's any malice there, and I cut his head off in the middle of the hallway, that is unjustifiable. It is illegal. It's murder. If it's some dude breaking into my house, decapitating him is fine. So it's not a matter of the action, because the truth of the matter is it comes down to why the action happened and to whom. That's what makes it justifiable. You can't look at an action in and of itself and say, that's never justified. Well, sometimes it freaking is. Welcome to being an adult.
Or, again, in terms of the toxic side of the cartoon community. And furthermore, I would even say that this is even further proof that those who use K-pop Demon Hunters to go and attack Elio, they are not fans of either K-pop Demon Hunters or Sony Pictures Animation.
And who decided that? You don't get to make that call yourself. You have no clue. You can't see into these people's brains. You don't know their hearts. You're making an assumption based off offense, which is not how you should talk about anything.
Considering that they expressed no cares whatsoever about the people behind the scenes, where, again, this was during the...
Okay, I'm going to ask real quick, why should they? Why should they care about people behind the scenes? Because you actually don't. You don't know these people. I'll go ahead and say, the people you care about directly is only about 150 people. That's been backed by science and neurological studies for decades now. I'm sorry, but if you are critical to a piece of media and the people who worked on it can't handle it, they shouldn't be doing media. That's just how it works. When you put your work out, people are going to criticize it, just like people on YouTube are going to criticize each other or whatever. Welcome to it. Welcome to it.
Time when K-pop Demon Hunters was at its absolute peak of its popularity. And yet, even with all the love that that movie is expressing, they are showing absolutely no respect for the people who are in that studio and would have no problem whatsoever to go and straight up attack the colleagues of the animators of K-pop Demon Hunters. Not to mention...
Attack how? Give me an example of the attack. If it's just random mead words on the internet, dude, step into my shoes for 5 minutes. You'd probably kill yourself. This is ridiculous.
That this is also something that really shows a massive loophole or a massive plot hole in terms of their big narrative of how Sony Pictures Animation is dominating the whole medium and stuff like that. You probably...
I mean, not really. The actions of a few poor idiots doesn't really undermine any of that.
I've seen like a few videos or a few people who would go and express that now Sony Animation is the new kings of animation, but where does Fix fit in that narrative? Where...
It shouldn't fit anywhere. It's garbage. It's gross. And you're weird for liking it.
Where is it that they would go and apply Fix in that entire story? Because that would honestly feel like a flaw to their whole argument, especially when this is a movie that they absolutely hate, arguably even more than the hatred that they would go and express with Elio. So that alone right there shows this massive hypocrisy that is within the community, where, again, they only see the targets and not necessarily the behavior, where if being a hater towards a project like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is straight up wrong, but doing the exact same thing and then some towards a project like Fix, then for some reason, that seems to be okay. However, Fix is just a minor example.
Okay, so hold on. I don't know anything about how this guy responded to Cloudy like a Chance of Meatballs, but I do know that film enough to know that it's just a pretty milquetoast kids film based on a book I read when I was in freaking elementary school, right? If he's losing his spaghetti over that, but this film is genuinely sick and twisted and does nothing to elevate the animation, like, medium, and is just actually gross and not at all what people would want, I'm sorry, that's going to be judged differently. You judge media meant for children differently than you judge media meant for adults. This is genuinely a stupid argument to make, and I would expect better from a guy who's been doing this for over a decade.
Of the double standards in the cartoon community, because there is a much more grand example of the sheer hypocrisy where now it's the toxic side of the cartoon community's turn.
You haven't determined or haven't demonstrated any hypocrisy. What are you talking about?
To go and fully display their hate boner down to the point where there are some in the community where they have made their entire personalities just on hating this one particular studio and going after every single project that they would bring out. And that is Disney.
Who
I
cares?
know many people are not ready to have this conversation.
You'll be okay. The billion-dollar child labor corporation will be okay. You must not need to defend Milady, buddy.
But we're at the point where we need to go and start talking about how the Disney hate is starting to become rather problematic, and that people are starting to go a little bit too far with their emotions in regards to Disney and the projects that they would release. And I'm not just talking about some of their weaker stuff that they would bring out, such as the Disney live-action remakes, although that's often been considered one of the major reasons to go and hate on the company. But I'm also talking about many of the other films that they would go and release as well, especially when it comes to their animated features. And this would range from the ones from Disney Animation, from films like Ralph Breaks the Internet, Raya and the Last Dragon, Strange World, Wish, and Moana 2, as well as Pixar, where even some of their movies would go and get heavily attacked on, such as Toy Story 4, Incredibles 2, Lightyear, Elio, and several others. Of course, there are a few exceptions, but there have been very few studios nowadays that would receive a tremendous amount of hate and consistently get that amount of hatred than Disney. But of course, this is not to go and defend Disney whatsoever, because they are still a multi-billion...
I'm not really sure what review that is. Actually, I've never seen Where the Dead Go to Die. Strawberry Milk for $5. Thank you for the video streams. I get to grind Final Fantasy 14 to whatever the toys cartoon of people being crappy. I hope all is well. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you're enjoying the content, you poor sucker.
billion-dollar corporation, and as such, they have done plenty of actions in which they deserve to be called out on. These include suppression of LGBTQ+ representation in their stories, frequently doing mass layoffs because the executives say so, often fighting against unions, continuously enabling AI, controversial working conditions like at Pixar or at the Disney parks, getting a little carried away with their prices in terms of their products and services, like, again, at the Disney parks where everything feels like it's way too expensive, and so on and so forth. So, of course, there are many times when we should be calling out against Disney, and that it is a good thing that we stand against the company. And a great example is with the whole Jimmy Kimmel controversy, when Disney complied to the orders of Trump and the FCC to go and cancel Kimmel, which ultimately led to serious backlash against the company to the point that they had to go and reinstate his show. Like, that is a moment that, of course, Disney were the bad guys and that they need to be called out on that. However, while there are some things that Disney would do in which it is justified to go after them, I feel like when it comes to whatever reasons that the cartoon community may have to go after Disney, or whatever reasons they may have to go and antagonize them, I feel like the grand majority of them are honestly insignificant or very petty. The kind in which that feels more like fandom whining more so than anything that would actually cause real world harm or any.
Okay, so let's see if you maintain that energy throughout the rest of the videos. So again, I'm at Mom Winchin is that Sony sold the rights to K-pop Demon Hunters to Netflix, so lumping K-pop Demon Hunters with Sony is incorrect with Netflix owners. Okay, that's fair. Didn't know that.
Anything that would.
Raccoon Fangirl for $5. Lio, I bet something 5 more one time. Also, I look up Vix. There's dog parts. It's animated. I need Bleach. I am not surprised.
Actually hurt any of the employees working there. Again, it would either be things that just feels extremely petty, where this is like beyond first world problems. They could possibly be over things that are not even true, and it's just...
Okay, what he's engaging in is called the fallacy of relative privation. There's always going to be some other thing or some other issue people could be talking about instead of what they are talking about. So those who you like to engage into this fallacy in order to criticize other people for not covering things you want them to cover for the most part, depending on the situation, you can cover it yourself. One could make that argument, but at the same time, like, there should in one way or another be a priority in place. Like, I think that, frankly, the problems Disney has externally and how they operate should be criticized more than whether or not their movie bad. Right? He has a point there. I'm not going to argue that.
Just reactionary behavior where they just want to shoot first and ask questions later. They could sound extremely repetitive where all they're doing is just repeat the same things over and over and over again. And that's especially the case when it comes to their complaints with the live action remakes, to the point where those complaints are now becoming as tiring as the remakes themselves. Or they let their behavior go fully unchecked, where they present themselves as extremely unstable and really go hyperbolic with their opinions, to the point where they sound no differently than how I was acting in my Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs reviews. And it really doesn't help either when a lot of them would completely ignore the more legitimate reasons to go after Disney because they would... They could possibly be over things that are not even true, and it's just reactionary behavior where they just want to shoot first and ask questions later. They could sound extremely repetitive where all they're doing is just repeat the same things over and over and over again. And that's especially the case when it comes to their complaints with the live action remakes, to the point where those complaints are now becoming as tiring as the remakes themselves. Or they let their behavior go full.
Electric Bloom reportedly will not be returning for another season. It joins the list of recent Disney Channel shows which only got a single season. Let me kill this for a second. Disney Channel needs to shut down. They've been creating shows and canceling them after one season. You know what? I think we can all agree we wish Disney went bankrupt at this point. Okay, those are opinions. What about them? What's the harm there? I'm curious.
Fully unchecked, where they present themselves as extremely unstable and really go hyperbolic with their opinions, to the point where...
Okay, what's wrong with these opinions? Who cares? Why do you care so much? What's the problem here? What's the actual problem here?
they sound no differently than how I was acting in my Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs reviews. And it really doesn't help either when a lot of them would completely ignore the more legitimate reasons to go after Disney because they would consider it to be political. Like, there are some fans out there who are more upset over the existence of Wish compared to what happened with the whole controversy of Jimmy Kimmel. And in that regards, I just feel like their priorities are just not straight in there. And again,
I think you need to find a mirror, brother.
It's one thing to go and criticize their works, to go and say that, you know, they didn't like the experience that they got with their movies and stuff like that. But there are some people that honestly take it way too far. And because hating Disney is so popular within that bubble, they end up normalizing that behavior, that they believe that, well, I see everyone else is doing it. Maybe it's okay if I do it, without checking in on their behavior or without even checking in on how far they would go and take it for the sake of just attacking Disney. So a lot of it is more in regards to either entitlement or it's just for the sake of bandwagoning. Again, there are many legitimate reasons to go after Disney, but if it's because you hate Wish so much or you think that Lightyear just insults you with its mere existence alone, then that's not really a valid reason to really go and just unleash your emotions against.
Well, okay, since you hold that value, I'm curious. Since people here say you're connected to Gramugula, which I'll assume is true just for the sake of argumentation, I wonder if you're ever going to confront him about being more upset over Lily's media takes than the fact that Lily's a kid toucher. I wonder if you're going to be consistent on this value. Let me know. Curious.
Them. And the anger that this group has against Disney has now become so bad that I can't help but feel like now the definition of what is a Disney adult has become so warped and confusing that really to go and figure out what does it mean to be a Disney adult, well, it really does vary now from person to person. And before I continue, I just want to go and say, yes, I am fully aware about what is behind me right here. I am very well aware of what...
Of all the Disney adults I've ever met, there's only one I actually liked. So I'm not impressed by Disney adults, to be clear.
On my shelves and what's on my desk and stuff like that. And you may find a bunch of different Disney paraphernalia where some people might think that if they look around the screen of like where I am here, they would think that, oh, I am a Disney adult. But again, what does it mean to be a Disney adult? Because now it really does vary from person to person.
Oh my God, who cares?
Person in terms of what is the actual definition. Now, some may say that a Disney adult is the kind of person that 90% or 95% of the time, the only thing that they could talk about, the only thing that they consume is exclusively Disney. You know, the kind of people who would go to the Disney parks monthly or weekly, or if they would go and make posts on social media, the grand majority of the time is only about Disney. So there are those kinds of people in which, yeah, they are just nothing about Disney and their whole personality is almost exclusively just Disney. But at the same time, though, there are those people who would say that a Disney adult is not someone who is 100% against Disney and just about everything that they would go and release nowadays. Sure, there might be those rare few exceptions that would get a pass, such as Encanto and Zootopia 2. But there are those people who would say that if you are not 100% against Disney and you're not angry against them for releasing whatever new movie that would come out or whatever thing that they would go and do that may seem a little bit controversial or that it isn't 100% perfect, then there are going to be those people that will go and label you as a Disney adult or a...
But the hate campaigns this year have had little to do with legitimate grievances and more just hating women in film. Keep cashing those Disney checks. Us women don't need you speaking for us. Disney hates women. A, your takes are a living meme. B, listen to people when they explain why they don't like something. They're being honest, just as far as it goes. C, you don't have to show for Disney at all. Disney is getting hate because they're sold out to their fans. They're sold out to their fans and are effing awful. So, Gramugula here, Mr. I want more child rape in my media, says Disney hate is just becoming more exhausting. Yes, it's a megacorp with tons of awful practices, but the hate campaigns this year have had little to do with legitimate grievances and more just hating women in film. Of course, he wouldn't actually know that because he just says things on the internet, guys. He doesn't actually look into anything. He just gets the vibes. So, on top of that, he says A is irrelevant here. So, your takes are living meme, maybe. B is also irrelevant. Listen to people when they explain why they don't like something. They're being honest. That's as far as it goes. So, how is that irrelevant that they're being honest and to listen to them? The problem is I listen, and listening makes the takes worse. No, you don't actually listen, Gramugula. You never actually listen. You make up in your mind what people believe. C is, again, baffling. I've criticized Disney's support of genocide, abuse of VFX, push for content, etc. Nothing you are saying has any ties to what I am saying. If Disney is supporting a genocide, why are you upset that people hate it? That should be a good thing in your eyes, you deranged animal. Somebody needs to put that guy down.
Disney shill or what have you, just because you decided to go and step away from the angry mob and you decided to say, oh, you know what, something like Strange World is actually enjoyable. Or if you would go and dare say that you actually like one of the Disney live action remakes that Disney would go and put out nowadays, there is a likelihood that there will be a group of those people that will go after you thinking that you're the enemy or that you're a slave to the Disney Corporation or whatever hyperbolic term that they want to go and antagonize you for not going into that same crusade as them for attacking Disney. So that's why with the whole definition of a Disney adult, default, it could either be something that is massively broad or it could be massively specific.
Warlord Fang for $5. That feeling when you find a hidden Mickey in your divorce papers. True.
I don't know. I feel like right now, with the Disney hatred, people can really get carried away, not just with their opinions on Disney, but also with how they view how others would go and consume Disney. So in that regards, I feel like there is at a point where, of course, not everyone, but there are some people out there who have a massive bias against Disney to the point that it really has become problematic with not just how they approach whatever project the company would go out, but also with their interactions with others and how they would ultimately communicate with others. That they can only vibe with those that share that massive bias against Disney, that thinks that everything that Disney does is evil and that there's no such thing as a good new Disney thing whatsoever, with somehow the magical few exceptions that they would just, enjoy it for that little moment and then sweep it under the rug so they could just go back to hating Disney. So
Who cares?
It really just makes that definition so confusing. And this is not to mention, by the way, that I honestly do find that the hatred towards Disney specifically is a bit ridiculous and that it really does narrow the community's
If they support genocide, why do you care why people hate it? Just let them hate it for the most part. Like, what's with the Disney shilling here? What's with the be nice to the corporation nonsense? This is asinine.
Perspective, considering that, honestly, this is something that I have learned when I grew past my hatred with Sony Pictures Animation, is that ultimately all of these studios are pretty much the same. It doesn't matter if it's either Disney or Universal or with their studios like with Illumination or DreamWorks, or it doesn't matter with Sony or with Paramount or with Lionsgate or what have you. All these studios, or with Netflix also, it doesn't matter. All of these studios are the same, and it's honestly wild. Like, when people would just go after Disney, I find that it's honestly ineffective. And I'm not saying that because it's wrong that they're going after Disney. I just find that it's honestly ineffective in terms of the cause that they want to go after. Because there are those people who only go after Disney in terms of some of the more legitimate things to go after them, rather it be with LGBTQ plus suppression, with AI, with working conditions, or what have you. Like, there are some people who believe it's only Disney who...
Look, if you're arguing that people should go after Disney for the right reasons, I'm sorry. Them apparently supporting a genocide, as much as I obviously don't hate the gays, I think that kind of outweighs them not being pro-LGBTQ. Like, let's get our priorities actually straight here. That can be addressed at any given time. If people are unironically dying, maybe that should be addressed first. I shouldn't be having to tell the leftists that. Bomberman for $2. Why does this feel like pseudo-defense of Disney? Because it is.
Who does that, and yet with some of the other studios, they don't do anything bad at all for some reason. Like, here are some good examples. There are a lot of people who will go after Disney in terms of that LGBTQ plus suppression, in terms of taking the stories that are in production and that they would take away any representation of an LGBTQ plus person. But how many people are also upset at DreamWorks and NBC Universal, whom, as I'm recording this, are facing a lawsuit in which alleges discrimination against a trans editor, specifically someone who has worked on the Bad...
I don't know. Have you asked them? Have you asked them?
Guys too, and the working conditions that they face was a...
Wow, there are animate reply guys in this chat. I'm not seeing any of them.
Nightmare, especially because of one person who really went after them because of their trans identity. And because of that, they reported it and the situation was solved. But then afterwards, DreamWorks then allegedly disposed of them. Like, basically felt like because they're a trans person that they felt like they were more of a nuisance to the company. And that's why there is this lawsuit that is now going on. Again, this is all allegations, of course, but still though, this is a situation that feels like might be even worse because now this is actually affecting real world people instead of affecting fictional characters and changing their identity for the sake of having a safer story. Now, you would think that with the community that they would really go and jump onto DreamWorks' case if they really do care about the LGBTQ plus community, but it feels like, honestly, you don't hear about it as much as something that Disney would go and do in terms of however they would go and handle LGBTQ plus representation, let alone how they would go and handle LGBTQ plus workers. Now, some may say it's a little bit of a different story, and yes, again, it is all allegations when it comes to this lawsuit, but still, though, the fact that the real big lawsuit right there doesn't have the Disney name doesn't seem to carry a lot of attention as much if it would go and have the Disney name on it. Or here's another example. You know how there's been some reported controversial working conditions going on at Pixar, especially with productions such as Inside Out 2, down to the point where there are people who have a grudge against that movie in particular? Well, how many of those people are also equally as upset at Sony Pictures Animation, and especially the productions of Phil Lord and Chris Miller, such as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, especially after the Vulture article was released? Yes, at the time, it definitely caught a lot of attention, and some people did indeed talk about it, but how long people went on to go and hold on to that grudge against either Sony or Lord and Miller or even Spider-Verse especially feels like it was a lot shorter than what Pixar would still be getting nowadays. Now, I just want to go and also make a clarification that as I'm recording this, even though we don't have an update in terms of that situation, and maybe there is a likelihood that maybe Lord and Miller have improved upon their behavior and maybe the working conditions have improved there as well. And I mean, you can also say the same thing with Pixar, but still though, how many people would hold on to that grudge towards Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse because of how the animators were treated there compared to Inside Out 2 with the way that the animators were treated there? Or how about any time?
I mean, that would depend on whether or not they actually know. So that kind of tends to come into play.
We hear Disney wants to be involved with AI, and people immediately give hell to Disney for even thinking about the idea to be involved with that technology whatsoever. But how many of those people are also calling out Netflix, where they are continuously doubling down on wanting to use AI, even to the point of actually opening up a new animation studio that is dedicated to making AI animation? How many of those people giving crap to Disney is also giving crap to Netflix on that? Now, with these examples, I am not saying that people only go after Disney and let all those others give a pass. Of course, those other companies are also getting crap as well for those. But the proportion in terms of what Disney is getting compared to what others are getting, you could tell that there is a massive difference. And again, that is especially the case when some people just want to jump into it for the sake of the bandwagon of hating Disney. So that's just one thing I really want to go and highlight, how this Disney hate can be a massive problem where it's not
Who cares if people hate Disney? Let people hate Disney.
not really helping out the cause when it's mostly just Disney that is getting the crap, while most of the others are easily getting a pass. Even when the backlash they have received, they can easily just brush off and they can continue their thing. But if I have to go and point out possibly the strongest example, at least as I'm recording this, of how the Disney hate is going way too far and how it's honestly to the point where it's pretty clear that it is rather forced, it has to be with Hexed. Now, I just want to go and clarify, as I am recording this, Hexed has not been released in theaters yet. Yet ever since it was first announced, the cartoon community, or again, the toxic side of the cartoon community, was ready to go and absolutely hate on it. And whatever they would go and reveal about it, they want to use that as an excuse to...
Isn't that the one that has AI and is spelled like a TikTok video? Typical girl boss, strong female protagonist who isn't understood by society. Maybe the power was in me all along. They were holding me back. Another 10 cents to the Disney cartoon empire. I mean, genuine criticism to make, I suppose. What's the problem? What's the problem?
To say that it is absolutely terrible and try to go and frame it as the next Citizen Vigilante or something like that. Like, no joke. Like, ever since, like, it was first revealed.
What the heck are you on about? That was them saying this is gonna suck. The heck are you talking about? Are you on crack?
And we only had a vague description of what the movie would be about. There was already controversy, there was already backlash, and somehow it was already enough for some people in the community to just go rage out and be massively upset over basically a broad concept of an upcoming feature. And you...
Yeah, because they're tired of it. What's the problem? Why are you upset that other people are upset? Why does this bother you so much? Disney's never going to pay you, bro. You're not going to get into the industry by suckling at their teat. It's not how it works.
You can tell right now that it has really gotten so bad to the point that now they are straight up using conspiracy theories and misinformation in order to find an excuse to go and hate on Hex. Rather it be with the whole conspiracy that somehow this is Disney's revenge on Dana Terrence.
Honestly, I just see Hex to be the middle finger towards Dana Terrace from the Mouse, since it feels like the Owl House being compressed into a Disney movie format, and reply to Knights of Guinevere, since I can see the Mouse making meetups. Okay, so this person might be uninformed, and Zella Stonebridge for $2. Disney cast members here, and I hate Disney. Based.
Because of how she is critical towards Disney and making a new series with Knights of Guinevere, so they want to make their own witch series to go and replace the Owl House for some reason, even though none of that makes any sense whatsoever. And Dana Terrence is still working for Disney, especially with that Owl House comic that she has been developing with the people there. And then you have the whole drama when Disney revealed the character.
You do realize that the comics done by the Disney Corporation are very much so disconnected from their animation field or the corporate structure in general. You do realize that, right? They're nowhere near as tight about their comics as they are their cartoons. That's a really stupid comparison to make. On top of that, no, studios do that all the freaking time. They absolutely replace other shows with similar shows that are cheaper to make. That's how that does. That's how that works. Why do you think the 2011 Thundercats got replaced by Lego Chima? Go look at the two properties. Tell me there wasn't an intent there. There actually was. Chima was cheaper. You're an idiot.
Character designs of the main characters, and apparently that alone is enough for the community to throw a massive temper tantrum because Disney is still maintaining its signature style, and apparently that seems to be a massive sin where it's not okay to do so, and that is enough to go and label it.
Okay, there's a difference between style and same face syndrome, and Disney suffers from the latter. You're not an artist, dude. You don't know what you're talking about.
As horrible animation, or an insult to the medium and an insult to cinema, or...
Yeah, they can have their opinions. What's your problem?
whatever, basically taking such a minor aspect and trying to really make this entire controversy over it for some reason. And that's going to be another factor that I will go and mention, by the way, because the cartoon community is such masters of making a mountain out of a molehill. And then there's just straight up lies that they would go and use and try to accuse Disney of using AI for Hex, or that it's going to be presented in vertical streams or whatever. Basically at the point where now they're just making things up to find a reason to go and hate on Hex, and that they want
Well, technically it's an assumption. It's not a made-up reason.
to go and call it one of the worst animated films without even actually experiencing it themselves, or even waiting until the full movie gets released before they could go and actually make a full judgment on it. And again, this is not to go and say that Hex doesn't deserve to be criticized whatsoever. There are some things in terms of the clips that they have shown so far where, yeah, it does deserve a few criticisms, or it doesn't look like the best thing that they have come out in years or whatever. There are some things that can be criticized, like there's nothing wrong with that. But the big problem is that with all the outbursts and all the controversies that the community is trying to go and fabricate with it, but the biggest drawback with the behavior of the community, and especially with the way that they really want to force out their hatred on Hex, is that it delegitimizes whatever criticism is out there. It really is a matter of Boy Who Cried Wolf, where they're basically screaming out nonsense to go and say that Hex is bad. But when you actually do see that the
He sounds so pressed about this. Like, didn't he say he doesn't get mad like this anymore? Well, I don't know if this is on the same level as what he used to get mad about, so I can't make that judgment.
Nonsense is nonsense, then the criticism is ultimately just not worth listening. I mean, I've heard so many stupid arguments against Hex where it's just proven to not actually be true whatsoever that it honestly turns me off from hearing whatever criticism can be expressed from it. If you're not going to be respectful with your thoughts, then at that point, you're not worth listening to. There's nothing really to go and hear, especially when they're at the point where they're flat out just disrespecting the animators. That really, they're not really hurting Disney at that point. They're just hurting the creative people behind the scenes that just wants to go and make an entertaining movie, and that's it. In fact, if you want to have proof in which their little quote-unquote activism is actually hurting artists and animators more so than it actually is hurting executives and companies, then look no further than the whole leak of Avatar Aang. You probably remember back in April when Avatar Aang, The Last Airbender, ended up getting completely leaked online. And there are some people in the community who took this as a moment of activism against Paramount, especially when they were massively upset over the decision of moving that movie from theaters to just Paramount Plus, which, yeah, I do agree it is a
Okay, can you get to the point? What's the problem? How did this magically affect the animators?
rather stupid decision. And from there, they felt like it was a victorious moment for the fans, that they can have a moment to stick it to Paramount and say that we're winning this situation. This is to show that you made a stupid decision, Paramount, and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, what ended up happening is that this ultimately harms the animators. This harms the artists who have actually worked on it, where they spent years.
All right, post from X. Post on X from people who worked on a recently wrapped project expressed their frustration with a leak in a thread. Animator Julia Scholl, Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Hell of a Boss Road. We worked on the Aang movie for years with the expectation that we'd get to celebrate all of our hard work in theaters. Just to see people unceremoniously leak the film and pass our shots around at Twitter like candy. I don't like seeing people use Paramount's awful decision to remove the movie from theaters to justify leaking it. I totally understand folks not wanting to pay/support Paramount Plus, but pirating the movie after its release would have at least been better than this. This is incredibly disrespectful to all the hard work the artists put in. Responding to a comment asking why pirating later would have been better, Scholl added, leaking a movie before release undermines the entire effort at its most vulnerable moment. No marketing build-up, premieres, etc., which harms the film's reputation and affects future opportunities for the artists who worked on it. Pirating, on the other hand, happens after the film has already had the chance to reach audiences through official channels and does not harm its reputation. That's not inherently true. And this seems like a lot of assumption, not evidence. And she's sitting here talking at the beginning about how she had the expectation she'd be able to celebrate for their hard work in theaters, but Paramount moved it to their streaming platform. This is just an assumption being made that he's taking his gospel truth. That's not how reality works.
Years creating Avatar Aang, only for it to ultimately just be unceremoniously displayed as just a little trend. And whatever surprises that they have in store and that they wanted to go and present, well, now it's all ruined because those toxic fans just want to go after Paramount, but don't see the real harm that they are causing to the artists and animators. That's why often their anger would cloud their perspective, where they're just so targeted at the anger towards the companies that they don't see the harm that they are doing towards others either. And this is not even to mention that when the movie did get released, suddenly there was the whole controversy where it was revealed that there was one artist that may have used ChatGPT in order to do research in terms of the character designs, and then from there, it just went and kind of repeated the whole process of this entire controversy, where the whole situation was just blown up, especially from the fandom, and then...
Yeah, don't use the pedo machine to get ideas. You're an artist, use your brain, doggone it. If you're referring to the artist that used ChatGPT according to what was shared at Comic-Con very early on, I guess the character artist tried it for background research. You can just do the research like an adult, instead of relying on the pedo machine to do it for you.
From there, the people who end up getting the biggest L are the artists and animators behind the scenes. It just suddenly feels like we just see this rinse and repeat process, especially because of this type of reactionary anger where they're so focused on trying to go after the enemy, which in this case here is ChatGPT and AI, to the point that they just don't realize about who they're hurting along the way. Unintentionally, sure, but still though, they're leaving their actions to be unchecked through their anger to the point that they don't realize the amount of harm that they are causing, and they end up actually hurting more so than actually doing good for their own cause in the first place. So at that point, if they end up making themselves look bad with that piece of activism when trying to go after Paramount, imagine how they look whenever they would try to go after Disney, because a lot of the times they end up hurting the artists and animators more so than they actually are harming the company, regardless of whatever intention they may have. If their activism actually does work, if their hatred towards films like with Wish or Moana 2 or the live action remakes, what have you, if they actually do work, Disney would honestly be in a much worse position than they are right now. So safe to say that...
Well, I mean, you have yet to provide evidence that any of this is hurting the actual artists. An artist having an opinion does not equate to harm.
Their attacks are unfortunately not very effective. Well, that's going to do it for this part. But keep in mind that this is only the beginning in terms of discussing about the problems with the cartoon community. And I have yet...
Alright, let's see if he gets anywhere with the next video, which is gatekeeping. Keep the gates, lad! Keep the gates! Let's see what he says about it.
At the start of this, I discussed about how the animation is cinema mindset has really gone to go and ruin the reputation of the cartoon community, and only scratched the surface in terms of the issues with what that mentality would go and carry. On top of this reactionary style tribalist mentality where there is always a need to have a winner and a loser, it also led them to have an unchecked amount
Unga bunga tribalism, Grug have big stick, Grug smart.
Of double standards and hypocrisy. While I did acknowledge my past mistakes with the Sony Pictures animation hatred from a decade prior, it's hard to ignore that the community is now committing the same mistakes that I used to do, especially when it comes to their hatred towards Disney, to which nowadays, as presented by their feelings towards Hex, is now rather forced, and it feels more like they're just desperately trying to keep a trend alive when the
You say forced, but you don't know these people. You don't know how they actually feel. I would assume that what they put out there is the truth of their nature. Stop trying to undermine them, just because you don't like what they say.
trend is already dead, and their forced bias is now viewed as cringe than to actually look cool as an animation fan. But in this part, however, we're going to go even deeper with the problems of this animation and cinema mindset. And we're going to be diving into subjects like how that has developed a populist mentality where now that's the only thing that's keeping the cartoon community alive, their lack of knowledge of indie animation, their behavior during award season, their dependence on nostalgia, and how they treat animators, to which unfortunately, the problem with harassment is becoming more and more of a common issue. Why is that? Well, allow me to explain. And that is why, whenever I see them, especially when they would go and enable their hatred for Disney and go after projects, rather it be stuff that's already released like Wish or stuff that hasn't even come out yet like Hex, I can't help but feel like, honestly, there's nothing that Disney can do to really go and please them, because ultimately, the cartoon community has devolved into a populist group. Because nowadays, the only thing that's holding the group together is not their love for the medium, but rather the fact that they have a common enemy. The fact that they are all together to go and fight against this corporate elite that they must go and take down by any means necessary. And for them, their target is Disney. So, unless they would go and put out an absolute masterpiece, like something that would be considered one of the best movies of the year, by that point, there's nothing Disney can really do to go and satisfy the cartoon community. Because what the community ultimately wants is an enemy, because that's the only thing that could keep the group together. But this is not to say that Disney is their only enemy for their big narrative. From time to time, they can go and change things around depending on what current situation may happen. Sometimes they would go after AI, sometimes they would go after some major corporate actions like mergers, sometimes we see them go after other executives. But the reason why I go and highlight Disney is mainly because they're probably the most common enemy for their narrative. Whenever they do get into
Well, that and you really like them and you want to defend them, you can just be honest about it, dude. It's fine.
That populist mode and that they need an enemy to go and fight against, one of the first ones that they commonly go to would be with Disney. Especially now, whenever they would talk about animation, it's becoming less about the things that they do enjoy, and it's becoming more about the things that they do hate. It's more the doom posting, ironically enough, that's now becoming more the glue of the cartoon community than their love for whatever new series is out there or for whatever new movie would go and come out. Because even if there are some of those that do get released, nowadays they are far and few between compared to how it was back in the 2010s. Not to mention that they keep acting increasingly desperate to go and find a savior of the medium, that they need to find an entity that can go and save animation. Especially when, as I'm recording this now, Disney is in a position that is very similar to how they were back in the 2000s, where they would end up releasing some box office bombs, and not all their movies would end up being highly praised by critics and audiences, that they need to find someone else to be their savior in order to go and keep up the medium, in order to go and present how animation is cinema. And in this day and age, you'll often find that some people would lean towards indie animation, and that they would go and highly elevate the works from Spindlehorse or Glitch Productions to say that they would become the new masters of animation, and that this means there's a massive shift in the medium where now they are going to be more dominant than whatever comes out in the mainstream. And this is honestly another problem I want to bring up with the cartoon community that not many people are talking about. Because as much as they go and hype up indie animation, I believe they don't know what it actually means. Because the truth with indie animation is actually a lot more of a broad term than how they would go and portray it. Because the cartoon community's definition is honestly very limited, especially when they mainly discuss about certain few projects that are indie, but are also among the most popular. Like whenever you would see, like especially when creators would go and talk about indie animation, for the most part, they would only bring up a few examples. Like they would go and talk about The Amazing Digital Circus, or maybe another project from Glitch Productions. Sometimes they would bring up Lackadaisy. They would also bring up the works of Vivzy Pop, whether it be the Helliver stuff like Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, and that's pretty much it. But the truth is, indie animation is so much more than that. Keep in mind, indie animation is animation that is being produced outside of the Hollywood system, outside of the mainstream studios. You got the films that are internationally created, or you got the works that are made internationally, like outside of the United States, and maybe a few exceptions as well, like also outside of Japan, and maybe outside of other high-profile studios that are not in the US, such as Aardman. Like, you got all those cartoons that are made all around the world that are also indie animation. But at the same time, you also got you also got the ones that are released on the internet, but maybe are not as viral or as popular as The Amazing Digital Circus
or not as easily accessible. Because here's the thing that he has missed completely here. Let me put a poll in the chat. Let's see what you guys think. Give me a second here. So, the question is, what is the common age group for the cartoon community? And we're going to have three options here. 13 to 18, 18 to 25, or 30 plus. Let me know what you guys think. It's a poll. Zella Stonebridge for $5. Funnily enough, the animation community is fixed united in a truce right now against a new Netflix animated series called Lesbian Space Princess. What? Why? What? What a name! What a name!
Or Has Been Hotel. And then you also got those that would go and screen exclusively in festivals, that the only way that they would go and present their works is by going into the festival circuits. Or you even got those that are distributed by smaller companies, where you got those that are distributed by either Neon or G Kids, for example. Like, you got those indie works that also get released. Or even the ones that they would be nominated for the Oscars, or they would be nominated during award season, that are lesser known than the mainstream stuff. Like, there is so much more to indie animation than those viral web series out there. And yet, with the cartoon community, they seem to always narrow down to those selected few as just indie animation. That's what indie animation is all about. And it's honestly weird to see them go through that, and yet they don't even spotlight those other actual indie animation. If you would go and gather the cartoon community, like you bring them all together, and you would go and ask them, how many of them have actually seen indie animation? How many of them actually support indie animation? And of course, you're going to get a whole bunch of them. Like, the grand majority will go and lift up their hand. And then you would go and ask them, all right, how many of you actually support indie animation that's not either from Glitch Production or Spindle Horse or any of the more viral web series? The grand majority of those will have their hands down, and only a selected few will still remain. There are still going to be those few people that they'll say that they do support indie animation, and they'll find means outside of the internet in order to go and do so. And my point with it is that if you really do support indie animation, do you know ways outside of the internet in order to do so? Because there definitely are plenty of ways. You could go to your local film festival and watch.
Well, that's one of the things you could have actually made a video on to educate people on, instead of getting upset that they don't know. Like, people only know what they're told, or what they experience themselves. You find out that a lot of the younger people actually don't know how to look this stuff up. They have no clue.
Lesser known cartoons. You can also go and just check them out whenever they would be released, whether on Netflix or whatever streaming service, or you could go and check them out in theaters whenever they would go and have their limited run. There are many ways that you could do so.
The reason, Dreamers, because anime's for the gays.
Without the internet. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you've never supported indie animation outside of your house, then
I think Spindlehurst loses a lot of the wiggle room of being called indie when they're in collaboration with Amazon and A24. Actually, yes. Yes. Because the minute you have to drop the majority of your original voice cast to suit something else, you're no longer indie. You're corporate.
I don't think you could say that you support indie animation. And by the way, since I did bring up award season, let me just get into that for a bit, because there is something about award season that really does bring out the absolute worst of the cartoon community. Imagine if you take that tribalism mentality, that need for...
Actually, you know what? I'm just going to say, you know who the best indie animator in the entirety of the YouTube sphere is? It's freaking Harry Partridge. Bet he doesn't bring him up once.
For competition to...
Man's been grinding for over a decade and gets no love from people like this clown.
Pit one movie against another and amplify that by 10. Because award season is basically the time when the cartoon community becomes so desperate for validation. It is the moment where they desperately want to feel like they are right with their opinions on whatever animated films are out there, or however they may feel about whichever studio, whether it be with Netflix, Sony, DreamWorks, Disney, or what have you. That's when they really take it to the extreme, because that is the moment that would determine if they feel like their opinions are validated or if they feel like they are rejected. Whatever the results may be, that's when they go and take their emotions way too far from it. Rather it be to go and rage out that their selection did not go and win, or if they want to go and determine how can they use that moment to really go and fuel more of their hatred against Disney and label them as losers and say that whatever they do...
Oh my god, who cares? The best indie cartoon is Dr. Bees!
consistently suck one after another. It is a moment where that, like, if you want a great example of whenever they take things way too far with their opinions on animated movies or what have you, look no further than award season, because that's when the community is at their most absolute cringe. In fact, the only way that you can enjoy award season nowadays is to go offline, to not hear a single word from what anybody on social media would.
And I'm just going to have the hot take. Why does anybody in this sphere care about the award ceremonies? Hollywood's ran by kid touchers. You want to be the favorite among kid touchers? Screw them and screw that.
Go and talk about, because
like, no, seriously, you shouldn't care if your favorite thing gets an award from the Hollywood elite that likes to hide whether or not they're touching kids. Like, screw all of them. The fact that anybody cares about that is a detriment to society.
There's always a high chance where they would immediately take things way too far with their opinions, and that just spirals down to like a whole controversy within itself. So the whole...
All right, so real quick, because I'm not going to keep the poll up for too much longer. The community's age, you guys got it right. The first one is 18 through 25. They're the highest number, and then followed by 13 through 18. They're younger people. They don't know how to actually look through this stuff, the history of animation, how animation's actually done. They know nothing of it. They just see thing I like, thing I'm fan of, therefore I want to promote thing I'm fan of. They don't think three-dimensionally like that. Expecting them to is stupid. That's why you should guide them instead of crying about them. Oh, Meat Canyon. Oh, God, don't get me started on Meat Canyon. That dude does some unhinged things.
whole thing with award season can really highlight how the cartoon community can be so sensitive with not just their opinions, but with their need of feeling like they are right about animation. And another thing to go and mention about that is related to that subject is whenever they go and make their posts about animation is cinema. And that was one of the main things of what ultimately ruined the whole mantra of animation is cinema in the first place. And ironically enough, whenever they would go and do those animation is cinema posts, ultimately it ends up becoming a massive detriment to the medium, and they don't really realize how that can be a problem. And the main reason is the way that they want to be very safe with those posts, where they would go and select a very few amount of animated features, one that have already established themselves to be absolute masterpieces, to go and say that animation is cinema, and then just highlight those selected few. But the
Okay, that's their preference.
big problem is that whenever people would go and make these posts and they would go and make those safe choices, ultimately, those choices end up becoming very repetitive. And it ultimately highlights not that these selected few are considered cinema, but how the vast majority of it somehow is not, according to the cartoon community. That according to them, whenever they go and do these animation is cinema posts and then they would go and present what they consider to be masterpieces, they're also indirectly saying that 99.9% of all the animated features are out there.
Rose Thorn says, also as an animation student, crowd, we just want people to be normal. You will never get that.
They're just not worth watching. Those are not what they would go and consider to be cinema.
Meat Canyon didn't do anything. He just does unhinged things.
And ultimately, that kind of turns off people who are not animation fans, and it's kind of saying that, well, if
Well, I'm glad you enjoy that series, Dunkside Phil. You're one of the 2 people who does.
it's only those few that are considered cinema in the world of animation, then maybe animation is just not worth it if it is very rare for animation to be cinema in the first place. So ironically enough, the cartoon community was sabotaging animation by making those posts. But the reason why I wanted to go and bring this up is not necessarily because
You're not sabotaging animation. They have no pull. What are you on about?
of how these posts are more of a detriment to the medium, but it's mainly because of why they only choose a selected few to go and say animation is cinema. Because in a way, it's actually on purpose. Because if they would go and make a post about how animation is cinema, and let's say they decided to go and be a little bit more unconventional and decided to go and make at least one choice that feels a little bit different. Maybe they will go and select like The Lion King, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Shrek, and then their other choice is a movie that they like, which is Minions: The Rise of Gru. And by that point, that's when it's going to cause a controversy. It's going to cause quite a stir within the cartoon community, because that's when people are going to suddenly jump into that post and really question or blast the post by saying, how the fridge is Minions: The Rise of Gru cinema? That's not cinema. That shouldn't represent what animation is. And then people would then go into a massive argument about what should be considered cinema and all that kind of stuff. It ultimately causes a massive mess because of what their definition of animation is cinema is. And again, this really does highlight how is it that just having opinions can be a sensitive subject matter within the cartoon community. In fact, I would even go as far and say that having a different opinion or having what is considered a hot take or an unpopular opinion or what have you, that is actually something that is considered rather taboo in the cartoon community. And I remember this is actually something that I've had a conversation with Burb about, with the fact that when it comes to the cartoon community or when it comes to the entirety of that particular fandom, it is relatively small compared to some of the other ones, whether it be for gaming or for major franchises like Star Wars or for anime or what have you. And in that regards, considering that for Western animation, it is a lot more niche, it makes the entire community a lot more tight, where one can keep a closer eye on the other, and it makes it a lot easier to know about who or what is it that's happening within the circle. But at the same time, however, with a niche group like the cartoon community, it also makes it a lot more rare for actual controversies to go and occur. And I mean stuff that is considered like really taboo, or what is considered to be like a massive scandal that is going on within the community. Like a good example, when Saber Spark was accused of sexual assault over a decade ago, but then thankfully he was later proven to be innocent, those types of controversies are actually extremely rare to go and happen within the community. And that is why within that community, the standard...
They're not rare. You just don't pay attention because you're too busy crying about people being mean about Disney. Do you have any idea how many scumbag, kid-touching weirdos from your community I've had to deal with and drag? Or the people who have hidden their behavior because, well, I like their cartoon reviews. Or prioritizing their cartoon stuff over anything else? Like, good God, what is wrong with you? Do you have no awareness of what's actually going on in your community?
Of what they consider to be a scandal or what is considered gossip or what can be considered a taboo action, that just becomes lower and lower and lower and lower and lower, where even the smallest things that could go and happen, that basically something that would occur that would be considered a small mistake in larger fandoms, they would be considered seriously taboo within the cartoon community. And this is why, to go further into my point, why is it that they love to go and make mountains out of a molehill? Because the standard of what is considered gossip and what is considered taboo or a scandal or what have you, that standard is just lower and lower and lower and lower and lower, where the grand majority of things that they would ultimately go and complain about, they're just nothing burgers. These are things that at worst, they could just be honest mistakes, or they could just be something as simple as an opinion that is different than what most others may go and say. They would go and explode that thing, really make it elevated so that they could go and have something to really react to suddenly go and have like a gossip to really get into. This is the main reason why they would take something as small and insignificant as a character design and just really go and blow that up as if somehow that is a need to go and present it as a serious controversy, as if it did something wrong to go and hurt the people during the process when making those respected features. And that is why where something that can be even as simple as having a different opinion than others, that can actually be considered a scandal. It can actually really be considered taboo. If you would go and say something like, oh, I know that the community is praising the show, but I don't really like it. Or if you would go and say that I enjoyed this movie that the community seems to really hate, they would go and actually take that as if you would go and say a massive slur, as if you said something that is highly offensive just because you decided to go away from the status quo, as if you're causing the whole mantra or the whole narrative of animation cinema to go off balance because you're not repeating the same narrative that they would go and say. Like, I can guarantee you that there are some people out there who are upset of my reviews of the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs films, not because of the way that I would talk about the creators, not necessarily the way that I would go and display my behavior, but just on the basis that I said that the Cloudy films are not good movies. And that.
So, you're mad at them for the same things you do. Okay, buddy.
That's it. But sure, that's just something from over a decade ago. But do you want to know what is considered my most recent controversy? What is the thing I've recently done that got the biggest backlash? It's actually liking Wish. When Wish was considered the most hated movie on the internet, I deviated from that and I gave the film an 8 out of 10. I didn't say anything mean to any other feature out there. I didn't say anything bad about the people who don't like it or anything whatsoever. It's just the fact that I said that I think Wish is a good and enjoyable movie and that I also ranked it among one of my best animated features of 2023. That alone was enough to receive massive outrage and to receive massive backlash from the community. All because I expressed an opinion that is different from what they're saying. But it's not just their opinions where they are overly attacked.
You're dealing with childish individuals in extended childhood because they didn't have to grow up. Surprise, surprise, they're going to say dumb things.
To. Sometimes, when there is a project that they absolutely adore, sometimes they would go and try to develop their own little theories or their own little headcanons of what could possibly explain certain situations. However, when the cartoon would go and come out with something new and they would present their own reason that turns out to be different than their headcanon or their little theory or something like that, when it completely deviates from it, there are some fans that would get way too upset and they would completely lash out over the cartoon and the creators behind it just because they didn't honor the headcanon or the theory that they may have. And that is honestly the reason why I'm completely turned off from fan theories.
$5 from Lost Coyote. This is what we call in the business a people online masterclass. Truly the worst guy ever made. I don't get the reference, but thank you for the donation. Weird. I should have registered. Don't think we haven't even been at for 2 hours. So weird that I didn't register. Okay.
Or I just would rather distance myself from any discussions related to theories or headcanons whatsoever, because those are things where there are certain fans that they can take it way too far and feel like they want that to be more official than what was officially revealed. And that's the point where they end up becoming a little bit too grabby, a little bit too clingy to the project, where they feel like it belongs to them more so than it belongs to everyone else, or that it belongs to the creator. And we, of course, have recently seen a great example of this with what has happened with Gooseworks and with the Amazing Digital Circus, where Gooseworks would receive severe backlash just because she didn't respect whatever headcanon or whatever fan theories that's up there, to the point that she would get some serious harassment over it. And I will get more into that soon, because that is related to a different point that I want to go and talk about. But anyways, to go back into what is considered scandalous in the cartoon community, this is why nowadays I've started to notice more and more whenever there is a discourse within the community, it's becoming less about the actual cartoons themselves, and it's becoming increasingly more about what other people are saying about animation. Rather it be what certain other creators have said in regards to a specific cartoon, or what is it that other people in the community, what is it that they post about Twitter that they need to go and mention, like, oh, could you believe what this person would go and say? In fact, there are even videos out there where people would just go and say, this person is wrong about this cartoon and here's why. It basically becomes this ultimate competition where they want to go and come out with the best opinion about whatever cartoon may be out there. Like it.
Or it could just be their own opinion and they're getting their thoughts out there. Why does this upset you so much? Oh my God, grow up. You're my age.
really is becoming a lot more about what's happening in terms of the drama in the cartoon community than just simply talking about the cartoons. Like, it's more about what they say about cartoons than it is about the cartoon themselves. And this is exactly why the cartoon community is becoming less and less of a fan base, and now they're becoming more gatekeepers. Now they're becoming so sensitive about their opinions about animation and what is it that makes animation cinema and stuff like that, that now they're at the point where it feels like they're putting up high security over what is it that people can go and say. That if you don't want to risk of being seen as the clown of the day on social media, or if you don't want to face whatever backlash, then you just have to go and follow whatever status quo that the cartoon community would go and put in, and only praise just the selected few that they would go and approve of. It's honestly ridiculous, because not only is it right now with the way that they want to handle animation in cinema, as I said before, not only is it becoming a detriment to the medium, but it really is at the point where, again, now they are just gatekeeping opinions, and they're really gatekeeping how things are within the community. This is why being in the cartoon community really feels like you're in a Stepford neighborhood, where you constantly have to stress over every action that you may do, because everybody's got eyes on everyone, and even one little...
Did he even watch the Stepford Wives? What? No. Just be yourself and give your own opinion. Who cares what anybody else thinks? Oh my god.
Thing that might seem out of line, or even if you just want to go and enjoy something that you just want to go and put on and have fun with, they will want to go and judge you, because whatever you may do...
Bomberman for $2? I thought you were in your 30s. I'm in my 40s. Maybe I'm overstating his age. I'm not sure. Either way, he's still too old for this.
Might be a hindrance on the image of animation is cinema. But then you have another factor that comes into play here. Something in which the more that the cartoon community clings onto and the more that they become dependent on it, the more that they go down on this downward spiral. And that is nostalgia. Now, listen, I am not saying nostalgia in general is a bad thing. It can be fine to be nostalgic over something. It's perfectly okay if you want to go and re-experience a moment that gave you a lot of joy in the past or during your youth or whatever. If you want to go and re-experience a childhood classic that you enjoyed as a kid, that's perfectly okay. Now, this may seem like a funny comparison, but I consider nostalgia to be like a recreational drug, kind of like alcohol or marijuana or something like that. Basically, if you want to go and take it...
I don't even know how to respond to a take that dumb.
By little
Hive for $5. Everyone should watch Lio's Thundercats retrospectives. Also give the old man money, you dorks. Thank you. I guess I'll count it. We're one away from more Gigi time.
Just to go and have a little moment of joy, just a little moment of escapism where you can have fun with something that you've enjoyed in the past. That is perfectly fine. However, just like those recreational drugs, there is such a thing as being too dependent on it, and there is such a thing as a way that it can pretty much ruin your life if you're just craving for that feeling again and again and again. And I'll just say it right now. Yes, I understand that we are currently living in some pretty hard times.
I mean, that's true for essentially anything. Archer for $5. I want Anna Matt and the other media literacy folks to review AI Fruit Love Island in hyper detail. They would talk about its important place inside it. I don't know what that is, but it is Gigi time. And now we have Godo for $5. Nostalgia is bad. You cannot go home again. I wish people would learn this to a point.
Times right now. I understand that when it comes to the world of animation, things are not as strong as what they used to be, especially how we're in the age of streaming, and that especially now cinema is very dependent on IPs and sequels and remakes and all that kind of stuff, and that it's becoming harder and harder to find features or to find projects that can be massively successful or that can even be considered good in order to go and accumulate a fan base where they can come together and celebrate their love for that particular piece of media. I do understand that. And this is not even to mention how even outside of that, life right now kind of does suck, unfortunately, especially with things that are becoming more and more expensive, rather it be with groceries or gas or housing or stuff like that, how fascism has gone completely rampant, especially in the United States, with all the different wars that are simultaneously going on.
Whatever.
Really does feel like life kind of sucks right now. So I do understand the feeling of wanting to have nostalgia as a moment of escapism to go and escape those times. However, with that said, there is a difference between being nostalgic and being stuck in the past. Because one problem with the cartoon community, or at least with those who are toxic, is that there are many of those who feel like they really are stuck in the past and just wish that they could forever live in the 2010s. Considering that was a time where animation was at such a massive high, especially during the early 2010s, where the dawn of the modern cartoon community really started to form, and there was a plethora.
So he's getting his own nostalgia going for a time that I promise you, if I go look back at it, it's just as deranged and stupid as it is now.
Of animated projects that people can come together and express their love for, rather it be stuff like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, and several others.
He's mentioning some things that are just flatly mid that people conflate to be good because everything else sucked at the time. I'm sorry, but no, those shows inherently, with the exception of maybe Gravity Falls in terms of its thought process and its long-term planning, I'm sorry, Steven Universe wasn't special. It wasn't very well written. The characters weren't very well developed. It survived off of hype and nothing more. You'll be okay, little bro.
And this doesn't even include the new movies that come out, in which we see animation reaching new heights, especially with the first animated features that have made over $1 billion at the box office, such as Toy Story 3 and Frozen, and not to mention Disney getting a new revival.
If you think that those are good markers for animation doing good, you lack any sort of knowledge about how good stories operate. Those two are so paint by the numbers, children know what's going to happen in them.
Era after the 2000s, where after experiencing flops, whether it be critically or financially, with film.
Notice he's putting his childhood and what he experienced as a better time, falling into nostalgia without even recognizing it.
Like Atlantis, Treasure Planet, Chicken Little, and more. Suddenly they're bringing out more and more big hits like Tangled, Wreck-It Ralph, and several others as well. It was definitely a time to shine for animation, and it really felt like animation has this new era where they could really go out and prove that animation is much more than a kid genre, that it really is an artistic medium that should be taken seriously. However, there are those people that feel like they just want to be stuck in that era, and they want the whole medium to also be stuck in that era as well. And the biggest problem when it comes to people who are stuck in the past is that whenever they want to stay in that period, their perception of other people all remain the same. Because the biggest enemy of
Bomberman for $2, get to the point. Man, holy crap, not you, Lyle. Trust me, I get it.
Nostalgia is change. And people who want to be stuck in the past, they do not want anything to go and change whatsoever, which is why they would go and hold.
Harvey Pliskin says, speaking of nostalgia, just saw that Golden Axe animated series trailer. If that's the best Paramount Plus can come out with, maybe it should have stayed in development hell. I agree. Absolute garbage.
Hold a grudge onto things that don't hold up to that standard of how they remember things were in the past, which really does explain why is it, or at least partially to why is it that they have such a hatred for Disney right now, because the standards of the movies that they would be releasing nowadays, they're not on par compared to how they were back in the 2010s with Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Zootopia.
Then let them complain. You can get over it.
Moana, and others as well. But what's even worse for people who are stuck in the past, because they don't want to change, they don't believe other people can change as well. And however they perceive those people back in whatever era, which in this case with the cartoon community, with the early 2010s, they see those same people the same way. They think that those admirable people from that era, they're still admirable people, and that the clowns from that era, they're still seen as clowns no matter what. And I can speak from experience that this is a big reason as to why there are still some people who still only see me as the Sony animation hater, as the guy who rants about Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Hotel Transylvania.
Oh my goodness. I have to. Masterge is here. Baiji, if you're still here. Masterge. Oh yes, Animat, the guy who went through the entire video naked and is such a massive simp for Disney. He sees all other animations lesser, especially so. Masterge wanted artists to work for him for free for a cartoon pitch of his, which was essentially just Saturday AM Sonic with different characters. With same face syndrome, and the guy like sexually likes anthropomorphic planes. I bullied the crap out of this guy in the Clownfish TV server, and if I ever see him again, I will continue to bully him. Masterge is a freak, and I love bullying weirdos like him. Like, he got super ultra mega butt mad that a friend of his decided to chase after a competition where they could have made actual money instead of doing his cartoon pilot or his show Bible for him free of charge. I love the fact that this loser's still around, because that means I get to bully him more.
Because that's how I was back in the 2010s. And even if I put in an effort to go and change, the problem is that's the Animat of the 2020s. And they don't want to see anything from the 2020s or anything like that. They just want to see whatever they see in the 2010s. So for me, because Animat of the 2010s is the Sony hater, for them, I am forever the Sony hater no matter what. And some people get that short end of the stick the same way. I know that there are some others as well whom they were clowns in the 2010s, and regardless if they have significantly improved nowadays, they are still seen as clowns. And another good example is actually with Mr. Enter. Now, I know that back in the 2010s, Mr. Enter has often been regarded to be a bit of a joke, especially when it comes to his attitude when he would go and present his opinions in regards to SpongeBob and Teen Titans Go. In fact, there was the infamous controversy where he ended up causing harassment towards some of the writers of SpongeBob and Teen Titans Go just because of some episodes that he didn't like, which ultimately did cause some backlash. And sure, throughout the years, there have been some incidents that did occur with him that ultimately, well, didn't work out for Enter, such as starting out his own Kickstarter with his animated project that was ultimately a bomb. And then there was also the whole Turning Red situation. But to Enter's credit, he has significantly improved over the years. He has really gotten better, both as a person and as a YouTuber. And even nowadays, he
I don't know about that, but more importantly, $20 says if he finds out I'm streaming about this. He's not going to judge me based on how I am now. He's going to judge me based on videos about me that happened 2-3 years ago. $20 says right now he won't live by his own values.
He has done a lot of very admirable stuff. He was one of the top investigators that he and his team.
Well, actually, no, he wasn't the top investigator, and his team were my people. My people, not his.
Really did dig deep down to go and see if whatever allegations that have been going on with the whole SaberSpark case, if it was true or not. And he was also working hard.
Okay, maybe not with the SaberSpark stuff. I thought he was going to talk about the Star Giant stuff, but okay.
To go, or as I'm recording this, still has been, calling out one of the most problematic people on YouTube or in the reviewerverse, Star Giant Productions. So I think with Mr. Enter, he has definitely become so much better than what he used to be in the past. Unfortunately, however, in some cases, yes, but the truth is he's truly, like,
pigeonholed to what other people think. He's terrified of stepping out of line. That's just the truth of the matter here.
Are those people that just refuse to go and see the improvements that John has done over the years. And that's mainly because they still want to see him as the butt of the cartoon community's joke. That because in the 2010s he was a joke, for the people stuck in the past, he has always been a joke. And this is why there can be some downsides of nostalgia and how it can really make you stuck in the past. Because if you fail to see what's in the present right now, then you end up getting a false image of how people are nowadays. Because the reality is that people can indeed change. And if you want to go and ignore that because that's not how they were back then the problem is that you need to change as well. And you need to let go of the concept that that past era you still want to be in is still around. We are in a new age and you have to learn to change and to adapt. But to go back into the factor of cartoons and with movies in general, I would even say that nostalgia is also a massive factor in terms of the grudge against the Disney live-action remakes. Of course, a lot of people will go and argue that the reason why the Disney live-action remakes exist in the first place, or may I say live-action remakes in general, considering that it's no longer just Disney that's doing it, a lot of people will say that the reason why they exist is just to go and capitalize on nostalgia. And that is absolutely true. But not many people would also go and discuss about how nostalgia is also a factor in terms of the hate of these live-action remakes. The fact that they would take many of these iconic classics or many of these fan favorites that people cherish so much, and then you turn that into live action, for that, they consider it to be a grave insult.
Because it is. Because it is an insult. Because it is just pissing on what it's supposed to be. In fact, if I ever find out this guy's a big Steven Universe fan, if they ever do a reboot of Steven Universe, this like super ultra mega right wing, if I hear a word from this guy, I'm going to stomp on him. Because the truth of the matter is, yes, it is disrespectful. Yes, it is garbage. Yes, it is a bad move. Don't defend that crap, you clown.
Listen, I'll just say right now, of course, I am not a fan of these live-action remakes whatsoever, and I completely agree.
God.
I would much rather see these companies go and create more original works than just spending their money on these pointless remakes. I mean, like, yeah, there are a few that I personally do enjoy, but there's also those that I think are not only pointless, but also terrible, like The Lion King, or How to Train Your Dragon, or Pinocchio, or Dumbo, and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is that there are times when people can take it way too far, not just because of nostalgia, but also, like, you do have the factor how they see that as an enemy of animation in cinema.
Well, it's an enemy of animation, I'll give it that, but I don't care about animation as cinema.
Considering that it is taking an animated property and turning that into live action. There are those times where, honestly, like, I do agree with many of the criticisms against them, but there are also times when I feel like they can be a bit much, and there are times when I feel like I just gotta step back and I just gotta tell these guys, like, calm down, they're just movies. Like, you don't have to take them so personally.
Maybe you should calm down and not take it so seriously when they're critical of it.
You know what I mean? However, I actually have one perfect example of how nostalgia can absolutely be toxic in the cartoon community, and that it has caused some massive problems where their behavior went way too far over certain projects. And that is in regards to DreamWorks Animation. Now, it's rather surprising to go and hear that the cartoon community would go against DreamWorks Animation, considering that, especially by the time I'm recording this, they have been doing quite well with the reception from the community and have brought out some fan favorites, whether it be with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, or The Bad Guys, or The Wild Robot. So far, they seem to be on the community's good books. But not all the time, though. It's very much like with Sony Pictures Animation, where if they would end up making one thing, or maybe a few things that doesn't meet their standard or doesn't necessarily meet their approval, they would go and rage out against them the same way that they would go after Disney. And there are two perfect examples of this. The first one is in regards to Kung Fu Panda 4. Now, in my opinion, I do agree that Kung Fu Panda 4 is the weakest of the Kung Fu Panda movies, especially when the writing doesn't feel as solid as the previous three, and on top of that,
I'm just
the
gonna
elements that
skip
they
this.
But then there is another problem that I would say is similar to the factor of indie animation, where they claim to be strong supporters, but when you actually look upon their actions and when you look upon the records, it actually shows otherwise. And that is in regards to their support of animators, where they claim to be strong supporters. They claim that they really do care about who they are. They highly admire them, that they are the masters of the medium and all that kind of stuff. But in all truth, no, they don't. They don't actually care. Or at the very least, they're not among the highest priorities of what they actually care about. And
well, it depends on whether or not they care about the animators themselves or whether or not they care about what the product they're putting out is. You can care about animation, but you can also dog on specific animators that suck at their job. Like, good God, what is wrong with you?
When it comes to how the fandom actually views the...
In fact, I can prove that with 4 letters, ACOM.
People working in the industry, at best, the value of animators and creators and artists who do work in animation, their value is only as strong as the project that they work on, because the product itself is much stronger than the well-being of animators in terms of what is it that the fandom values the most. Now, this is something that I am aware that this is very common in terms of fandoms in general. A lot of them, especially those that have a notorious toxic reputation, from there, they would always go and, in the best case scenario, value the products that the people would go and create rather than the people who would go and make the products. But you can see from there where the problem can be, because in the field of animation, of course, you're going to be working on on numerous of projects. You're going to be working on things that are either amazing or they could turn out to be total crap. And depending on your position, sometimes you'll just do a little job on one major project, and sometimes you'll have a bit of a bigger position on a smaller project. But it all depends ultimately on what is the highest position you've been on whatever project you are, where people are going to remember you the most. And ultimately, that is how the fandom will judge you. And considering how their emotions that they have displayed in terms of certain animated projects, you could see how it could go a little too extreme, or that the judgment can easily go a little bit too far. Like, for example, if you are known as a director of a highly acclaimed animated feature, something that went on to become very successful, highly praised by critics, got a lot of word of mouth, and even received some awards along the way, then you would be considered a very admirable figure. You will see people who will go and put you in a high pedestal because you are known as the person behind that particular project. But on the opposite end, on the other hand, if you are mostly known for directing a movie that has been not only a box office flop, but also panned by critics and hated by audiences to the point that mentioning the movie is more of a joke than actually properly discussing about the film, then they're not going to care about you at all. Your worth as a human being is only as strong as the product you would go and create. So,
well, it depends. If you're the guy who made, like, The Room, they're going to love you. Even though the movie is awful. He's effing automatically taking and on accounts as real good faith people, a critical flaw, not surprised.
If you created a weak product, then how they view you is a weak person, unfortunately, and they're not going to care about what would happen to you whatsoever. In fact, there have been times where the fandom would really get carried away over something that they hate the most and completely disregard about the people working behind the scenes. Because people will tell you that at the bare minimum, even if you don't like something, you shouldn't be going after the people behind the scenes because all they're doing is just doing their jobs. They're just making cartoons, and that's pretty much it. And it shouldn't be...
It depends on how you go about it. You can criticize them without going after them like a wild animal. I'll agree on that one.
Considered a crime if they end up making something that is not up to your standard. But there are plenty of people, unfortunately, in the cartoon community that they just don't care, where they end up falling into the same mistakes that me and Mr. Enter used to do, and that they only focus exclusively on their hatred on whatever cartoon is out there, and they would go and disregard about who's in charge. They feel like if you were involved of that thing that they hate so much, they consider you a criminal for it. And yes, I do know that over the years in the cartoon community's history, this has always been like that, and we have seen from time to time where they would go and rage out on certain projects, and that they would be, at minimum, disrespectful towards the people behind the scenes, such as the case when we've seen the rage of Johnny Test, or even with Teen Titans Go, or some of the later seasons of SpongeBob, for example. But nowadays, it has become far...
The first two, the rage was justified. Much like the Epstein Files, you don't hate Teen Titans Go or Johnny Test enough.
More rampant, and that's why it can often feel very overwhelming when there is a cartoon that the community desperately wants to hate. Like, one great example is in regards to Velma. That is debatably one of the most hated animated shows in recent years. Now, I will say right now, I haven't seen an episode of Velma, and based on the word of mouth that I've heard, I'm not really that interested in it. But one thing that did take me away from even touching Velma is the reaction from the cartoon community, where the hatred is just overwhelmingly strong. And
yeah, because they found out the person who was behind it was a sexual assaulter and projected themselves onto the Velma character as a stand-in. Maybe pay attention next time. Raccoon Fangirl, $5. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
And I was very much put off when the news came out that Velma was canceled, and the cartoon community was just fully celebrating its cancellation, saying that the evil is over and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, and? Why is this a problem? Get over it.
And completely disregard about the people behind the scenes. Like, even if you do bring up that, hey, this is not really good news because people are going to lose their jobs.
Yeah, kicking the teeth here for you, buddy. Even if it was a success, people still would lose their jobs. Because the show has to end eventually, and that's how that works. Maybe instead of crying about people being mean about a garbage show, you should be talking about how to better create these jobs and make them sustainable.
They're not going to care. For them, what they care most is their hatred for Velma, and they want to feel like they had a victorious moment because the whole thing was canceled. So really for them, it doesn't matter about what happened to the animators. For them, they just care more about their anger and hatred towards the project. And they don't care if people have lost their jobs. They're just going to go and celebrate regardless because, hey, the project is done. And I mean, the loss of jobs is just a small price to pay. Another great example that I'd like to bring up is in regards to Angus MacLane and Galen Sussman. And I feel like with the outcome of those two, they really represent very well in terms of, even though they may have a very prominent career in animation, their worth can only be as much as the one thing that they're the most well known for, and fans will go and take action to only that accordingly. Now, the thing with both MacLane and Sussman is that they are two longtime Pixar veterans. They have worked at the studio since the 90s and have been credited in several of their beloved pictures. And when it comes to the most prominent work, like where they would go and reach very high on the ladder, it was actually with the 2022 movie Lightyear, to which MacLane was the director of the picture, while Sussman was a producer. However, in the following year, in June of 2023, unfortunately, Disney was doing another round of layoffs, and this one affected Pixar, to which unfortunately both MacLane and Sussman were let go. And even though with both of them, they are very similar in terms of their careers and what they have done at Pixar, the reactions cannot be more...
Magma, it was a joke, Magma Paint. It was a joke. It's a joke.
or opposite. When it comes to McClane, people did not care whatsoever. In fact, if there were those who would bring up McClane, some would unironically celebrate that he lost his job at Pixar, mainly because of the fact that he is mostly known as the director of Lightyear. And considering how there are some in the cartoon community that would have a great hatred for that picture in particular, they would let their emotions get carried away and feel like, well, because he did Lightyear, it would be justified to go and fire him, like to go and present that kind of entitled attitude. However, when it comes to Sussman, she would get a lot of sympathy and a lot of attention in terms of losing her job. Even though she was a producer on Lightyear, that's not the main thing that she is the most well known for. Galen Sussman is actually most known for that story with her involvement in Toy Story 2. You probably have heard of the famous story where the movie got almost deleted at Pixar, but she actually carried a file at home to go and help babysit her kids. So she has often been credited as the woman to go and save Toy Story 2. And that's why you see, in terms of those two completely different reactions, it doesn't necessarily matter how long they have worked at Pixar, what kind of movies that they have been working on over the years and all that kind of stuff. Because of that one notable thing that they have done, people believe that Angus MacLane is the lesser because he was known more as the director of Lightyear, while you got Galen Sussman, and even though she does have the same kind of credentials as a producer of Lightyear, because she is known for that one unique story at Pixar, she would end up being highly elevated. Again, doesn't matter how long you have worked on a studio like Pixar, or if you have a very admirable portfolio and have done a lot of great credits and stuff like that. It's all in the matter of the one quick thing that people can recognize you the most, where then people...
$20 if I ask this guy's opinion on 80s animation. He'll talk about how it was the dark ages of animation and talk about how it was bad. $20.
On social media would go and quickly judge you just based on that. Unfortunately, in this day and age, the worst case scenario is that if you end up being someone who is part of the creative process of making something that the cartoon community absolutely hates, then the worst case scenario is that you would end up getting harassed if they ever find out that you were involved with that particular project. And I've already mentioned before about the example with Fix and what happened to some of the animators there, despite the fact that it was at a time when Sony Animation was still highly praised, K-pop Demon Hunters was at its prime. People didn't care. They don't care about where they worked and stuff like that. If they made something that they hate, they would end up getting harassment or even worse. But you know what's the worst thing about this whole case? Is that the group that ends up getting the absolute worst, and I would even say even more than the projects that the cartoon community hates, is indie creators. I would argue that indie creators are the ones who get it far worse than any artists or animators out there. And the reason why I say this is that there is a secret benefit to working on mainstream projects if you are an artist, an animator, or what have you. The thing is that at least with mainstream projects, it is far more likely that you're not going to get the blunt of the hatred from the cartoon community. Now,
I'm going to tell you why indie creators get more hate, because they make themselves more accessible to their fans. That's literally the reason.
Not going to say that this will happen all the time. Again, Fix is an example of this. But the thing is that the anger and the hatred that they would have for that particular mainstream project, it would end up being received towards the company and the executives.
Also, I see the chat, hot take, Scrappy's overhated. Like, it's not Scrappy's fault that writers used him to take everybody else's position in the Scooby Gang. All right? He was just fine when he was created. It was okay. All right? All right? Scrappy's fine. Stop hating on my boy Scrappy. He didn't do nothing.
That are in charge. Rather it be with David Zaslav with Warner Brothers or Bob Iger with Disney, considering that the cartoon community has complained so many times about those individuals right there. And that is one thing. But when it comes to indie creators, however, they don't have that luxury of having someone on top of them to go and ultimately blame. Because as indie creators, they're the ones that are responsible for the project itself. They are considered the top ones to go and ultimately develop either the movie or the series or the cartoon or whatever. So in that regards, if that indie project ends up doing something that the community...
They call it that because Disney wasn't doing well at the time and because they think the television animation was bad because, oh, they just made it to sell toys. As though people don't make other animation to sell other things like ideologies or other products or whatever. These people have no imagination. They don't actually have respect for the medium. They're just mad because 80s cartoon, people like them and not what other nonsense they have.
Does not approve of, then they will...
Did you hear that Pearl's VA is MAGA, Lyle? I actually don't have any evidence that she is actually MAGA. I know she follows accounts that tend to be, but follows aren't always endorsements, so I don't know why she's following them. Like, there's some people I follow just because I want to see what stupid crap they're going to say, right? So, who knows? Who knows?
Go and unleash their anger and their hatred, and they want to go and harass the creators, ultimately. And again...
He's pugnacious but endearing like Lyle. I have now been compared to Scrappy-Doo. Now I should kill myself.
And this is especially the case with Gooseworks, where at the...
Not because I hate Scrappy. But because that's a disservice to Scrappy.
End of the Amazing Digital Circus's run, it felt like the controversy and the outbursts from the community and the fandom, specifically from them, had become more and more common. I even said before that it was becoming more and more difficult just to go and catch up with what the fridge is going on and what is it that people are getting so upset about. And at that point, a lot of the backlash and what is it that people were so angry about with Gooseworks is merely nothing more than just the creative decisions that she wanted to do for her series. Rather it be for which characters that she wants to go and spotlight, like with Pomni or Jax, or with how the last act or the final episode ultimately became. And those people who disapprove with whatever the outcome may be, they ended up being furious, and that's where we ultimately saw the massive harassment from Gooseworks.
Okay, so here's where I'm going to be a bit of a dick for a second. Show of hands if you think, as good as the Amazing Digital Circus is, that people are going to remember it 40 years from now. I could say He-Man literally anywhere, and everybody knows what I'm talking about. $2 from Raccoon Fangirl. Lio is scrappy. Oh, God.
Where it even got so extreme, she had to go and bail out of Reddit altogether. She had to go and completely delete her account so that she could separate herself entirely from that toxicity. And even nowadays, I don't know how true it is, but it has ultimately become at the point...
Okay, part of the problem, honestly, is that they don't know how to ignore these people. Like, people come at me like a wild animal all the time. Either I make fun of them or I ignore them. It depends on who they are and whether or not I find it entertaining. You've got to learn to have a thick skin if you're going to be involved in any sort of thing that's going to get public criticism.
Where Gooseworks became a bit disenfranchised with the Amazing Digital Circus altogether, and once that series was done, she just wanted to move on and has no interest in being involved with the Amazing Digital Circus altogether because of...
I wish I could send super chats. It sucks having autism. Autism stops you from sending super chats? What?
How the fan base, or at least the toxic side of the fan base, has completely ruined it for her. And this is not even to mention how also Glitch Productions has been getting a lot more and more of the receiving end of the hate from the toxic side of the cartoon community. And at that point, this is also another example of how I feel like all the complaints that have been going on from the community, they are starting...
At least you're not as bad as, hey, be nice to Fred, all right? Frank Welker is a goat for maintaining that role for, like, decades.
To sound the same, because I feel like, especially because of their narrow definition of what indie animation is, people are going after Glitch Productions the same way that they would go after Disney, labeling them as a greedy company, hating upon their creative choices of what they would do.
Oh, boo-hoo.
With some of the projects like what we have seen with the Amazing Digital Circus, or even a bit of Nice of Guinevere, no different than when they would go and complain about some of the creative choices of Wish, or even with something like Gameoverse, they would be complaining about the character designs, no differently than when they would complain about the character designs of Hex. So,
I mean, I ain't gonna complain about any of the women's designs in Gameoverse, frankly. I mean, I like them thick.
In that regards, regardless if it were an indie production or if it's an indie creator, they don't care about that indie label or what they've previously said about how they view indie animation altogether. For them, if there's something in there that they don't approve of, they will treat them no differently than how they would go after any of the mainstream companies such as Disney. And holy shit, man, I don't even want to get into the situation with VivziePop because honestly, that's like a whole can of worms in itself. And honestly, another and probably one of the most prime examples.
Has VivziePop hunted down all the staff from the Amazing Digital Circus yet to kill them? Because she promised that. She hasn't done it yet.
Examples about how indie creators are treated, and it's not very well. In fact, the whole discourse in general with VivziePop has been so extreme. And I'll just say right now, I have nothing against Vivian Madrano, and honestly, I have nothing but admiration with the success that she has gotten over the years.
I don't.
To the point that now she has become one of the most prominent figures in the animation industry today. But still, though, you cannot get into a discourse about Vivian Madrano or any of her creations without seeing some extreme reactions where the discourse can easily get out of hand and go way too far. Because you're going to get those haters that literally believe that she is the devil and must be canceled and be labeled as a criminal as soon...
Well, I mean, she's awful fond of the devil for some reason, so... Yeah, I was planning on looking at these two at some point, but the person I was going to look at them with kind of lost her mind, so... Oh, well.
As possible. And then you've also got the other side where you do have the fans that are a little too attached to those projects and that they are...
There's Sai. There's everybody's favorite let kids access porn little freak. Yeah, Sai's a bit obsessive about this crap. Sai is 40 but never actually grew up and thinks anybody who criticizes anything Visby does is misogynistic. She lives at home with her mommy at the age of 40. It's embarrassing.
Way too sensitive whenever they hear a different opinion, down to the point where they would lash out at anybody who doesn't give high praise to any of the works from Vivian Madrano, whether it be with Has Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss or what have you. Ultimately, that's sadly something that I know this is going to sound bad, but it has honestly made me want to distance myself from anything related to any of her works. Again, this is nothing against her, but I just...
You know I love you, Hive. You'll be okay.
Feel like, honestly, when it comes to the discourses, when it comes to the fans, and when it comes to the haters and stuff like that, it's just a little bit too much where I'm a little afraid to even go and touch upon it because whatever opinion I may go and express in regards to something like Has Been Hotel or Hell of a Boss, I'll just end up getting massive backlash, and there's no way that I could go and win on this. And by the way, yes, I know that like with these indie discussions, again, this does not reflect on all the fans of the Amazing Digital Circus, and this does not reflect upon all the VivziePop fans for sure. Like, I know there's a lot of them that are great people, but there are those toxic ones that definitely do take it too far. And again, going back into the hate that indie creators that they would go and receive, whether it be with Gooseworks or with VivziePop, sometimes it could be a little bit way too far, and it's sadly one of the consequences of being an indie creator that people don't really talk about, because if it becomes massively successful, then there are going to be a group of people that will make sure that your life is going to be an absolute hell. And this is not even to mention that
it's terror time again. Fantastic Scooby-Doo movie.
Nowadays, it feels like harassment is growing more and more and more of a common issue within the cartoon community. That it's almost as if every time there is an animation-related controversy going on, there's always going to be that handful of people that would go and immediately take things too far, where their first immediate action is to go and harass the target, whatever it may be. Rather, if a studio would go and put out a movie that may not be up to high standards, or if there's someone who may have done a controversial action, like Jorge Gutierrez, who momentarily wanted to create an AI animated series with Amazon, then at that point, there's going to be that group that would go out of their way and think that their solution is to go and scream at the target, to go and heavily bully them to submission, where there are those people who unironically have that
Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost is also good. It's got fantastic animation.
mantra of bullying works, as if that whole situation with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, that because of that one time they were
Hold on, no, you don't get away with that. Let's back that up, little bro.
a controversial action, like Jorge Gutierrez, who momentarily wanted to create an AI animated series with Amazon, then at that point, there's going to be that group that would go out of their way and think that their solution is to go and scream at the target, to go and heavily bully them to submit.
Yes, and they should. Constantly, unapologetically, consistently. And to be clear, I love El Tigre. Like, I enjoyed it very much, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to give him a pass for wanting to work with AI garbage. Like, stop working with the freaking devil.
Mission, where there are those people who unironically have that mantra of bullying works, as if
Because it does. Sorry, newsflash, bullying does in fact work in a lot of different situations. And sometimes it's the right thing to do. I'm sorry, but it is. And you may not like that, right? Every after-school specialist taught you otherwise. Reality is a hard taskmaster, buddy. You got to pay attention.
if that whole situation with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, that because of that one time they were able to make things go their way, they think that logic will apply to whatever. That if they are angry and loud enough on social media, that somehow they will make things go their way, and that fans will end up having more control over animation than anybody in the industry in general.
That's a conflation of the argument, actually. Their point is, if we're loud enough and boisterous about us enough, they'll change it because we're the target audience, and they kind of want our money.
But with that said, however, there are those times when it can get way too carried away way too quickly, even to the point where the bullying would be taken to the next level and would end up throwing out not only death threats, but even doxing as well. Like, we're talking about legitimate 4chan or Kiwi Farm style behavior. So in that regards, I feel like maybe that
I will dox all of their Neopets.
that would be like a whole subject in itself of how harassment can be a problem within the cartoon community. But at the very least, it definitely is worth mentioning that I feel like nowadays it is starting to become more and more of a common issue, especially with those who unironically believe that bullying works. Well, that's going to be it for this part, but there is still more to go and cover. Tune in next time, and I will go and discuss about not just a key factor to the problems with the cartoon community, but what some may say is the reason why not just the cartoon community, but fandoms in general have become so negative, so toxic, and can be quite unbearable at times. What
do you mean so negative? Is he going to cry about negativity? Is that what this guy's going to do? I'm going to crash out if he does.
I will be discussing, of course, about social media. And on top of looking into why is the priority for engagement not only ruining the reputation of the fandom, but also the reputation...
I don't care about the reputation or your fandom. Fandoms suck by nature.
...of online personalities that are mainly known for discussing about animation, such as cartoon reviewers. But I will also talk about how one of the fandom's main hubs is also one of the most toxic and one of the worst websites that you could find on the internet today. And I think we know which one we're talking about.
Meatspin.com. Goatsy.cx. Please don't actually go to those websites. Alright, so far he has one video here, right? Now I don't know when the fourth one's coming out, but when the fourth one comes out, we'll do this one and that one, and we'll see how bad it gets, okay? Hopefully you guys enjoyed the little romp. I am now going to end the stream because we've been at it for 2 hours. Again, if you're a member, feel free to check out the new content that's being uploaded, but I'm now going to go grab something to eat and play Halo. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you for the kindness, and we will catch you all next time. Have a good night.
Don't miss the super androids that fly on wings of silver and fight with nerves of steel. The mighty Silverhawks.
Afternoons at 4.
Thundercats! Ho! Thunder excitement is flying at you this fall when the Thundercats tear into action.
Let's cut those mutants down to size.
Get ready to strike a blow for justice this fall with the mighty Thundercats.
Lupin!
That man is a notorious thief who works all over the world!
Let's go meet this treasure that's soon to be ours.
Don't say that I didn't warn you.
Stop that woman! You can't fool me! You're planning something again!
Jeez, Pops, can't get anything past you.
He'll steal your heart, and then he's coming for everything else. Lupin the Third, premiering next Saturday night at 2.
Take it off.
That'll be my pleasure!
Only Toonami on a...
ビーストウォーズセカンド最大の敵がついに目覚めたライオンコンボイ変身新司令官の登場だガルバトロントランスフォーム破壊大帝驚異の三段変形ライオン台風史上最大の対決に君も参加せよだからトランスフォーマービーストウォーズ
If one is born a man, at least once in his life, he will dream of becoming the strongest man alive.
Are you surprised at all? This is Orochi-style karate.
That's it, baby. Come straight for me.
Your training has paid off most impressively. I'd be happy to reward you now for all the progress you've made.
He could never recall your What an adorable little playground you have here.
Maki the Grappler.
You have accessed the secret files of the SWAT Cats. Name, automatic cement launcher. Function, launches pre-mixed fast-drying cement at the rate of 5,000 GPM. Glots per minute. Very effective at freezing monsters right in their tracks. Ending transmission. You have accessed the secret files of the SWAT Cats. Name, Jake Clausen. Occupation, garage mechanic. Alias, Razor. Real job, SWAT Cat. Designs gadgets to capture bad guys. Goal, protection of Mega Cat City. Favorite expression, bingo. Ending transmission.
Meet St. Canard's Most Wanted.
8 wattage, Starkling!
There's Megavolt, criminal circuit breaker.
It's playtime!
Quacker Jack, fiendish felon. Bushroot, experiment gone haywire.
I'm really not sinister, just misunderstood.
And diabolical evildoer, Nega Duck.
A rotten kind of guy!
And only one superhero can stop them.
The original, Mr. Fix-It! Get up!
Darkwing Duck.
A new Optimus Prime is here.
I'll transform Optimus!
Power Master Optimus Prime, greatest leader of his time.
It's great to be back.
Now, Optimus Prime is back as a Power Master. He only transforms when his Nebulon becomes his engine.
Power Master Optimus Prime.
Look! Optimus is transforming into a super robot! Power Master Transformers! They've got the power to surprise!
The Earth lies shattered and broken. A ruined wasteland that is now struggling to sustain life. Humanity is near the end after a devastating global meltdown. The oceans have been boiled away in nuclear fire. The land is charred and disfigured, saturated with deadly toxins. Life is a nightmarish struggle. The radiation levels have created hideous, mutated human savages. Mentally deranged, they roam in search of food and water. Gruesome violence brings terrible death to those who encounter these murderous mutants. It is an orgy of chaos, madness on a global scale. Savagery knows no limits. There are no nations, no laws, no order. In this grim reality, the forces of good and evil are once more preparing to fight for the future of mankind. Far, far away, a star shines out from the blackness of space. A beacon for the lost, a symbol of hope, an unfailing comfort to those on a journey. Known as the North Star, it has, through the ages, meant many things to many men. Under this eternal light walks the namesake of this star, a man of power and purity. A living beacon of hope, destined to bring light into the darkness. He is a feared man, spoken of in hushed tones. A legendary fighter, able to call on secret powers. Violence is met with worse violence as Ken destroys the forces of his evil half-brother. Heads roll, bodies fall, and the earth runs red as Ken draws ever nearer to Shin's stronghold in the city of the Southern Cross. The scene is set for an epic struggle between good and evil. What Shin started cannot be stopped. Many will die trying. Many will run. But there is only one Fist of the North Star.